operations. So on non-match days, the area will contain static units, toilets, the Hawkeye unit, which is essentially goal line technology, and GRP enclosure. That basically looks like a couple of small ISO containers. On match days itself, that area will have all the broadcasting vehicles and vans within it. They'll plug into the media infrastructure to support the TV coverage. And there's also an area of that outside broadcasting compound for away team coach parking. So the council built cycle and pedestrian path used by approximately 900 people daily. It currently follows a desire line along the stadium boundary. But to facilitate the outside broadcasting compound in the south stand foundations, that path has to be diverted. So the proposed route represents the next best alternative, again, following the boundary of the proposed stadium, and allows continued use of the path. The route will remain available for occasional emergency vehicle access as well, for if there's some sort of emergency where this side of the stadium, for instance, is better to access from. So as a consequence of the enabling works, including the outside broadcasting compound, the cycle path diversion in the south stand foundations, car parking needs to be reconfigured. There'll be a loss of around 155 spaces during the enabling works. That will reduce to 44 spaces, but that's in the next application. So for this one, we'll have to consider the loss of 155 car parking spaces. This loss is recognised as having an impact, but mitigation has been proposed and agreed. And then there's also cycle parking. So cycle parking here, with the barrel bikes as well, and some cycle parking there. Retains the number of cycle parking spaces that they have right now. BNG planting, it's largely going to go within vegetated areas, already vegetated areas, basically improving the condition of the habitats and planting some more species, making it more akin to the character of the area. And the scheme also includes some small infill areas to balconies and minor sections of the west stand. They don't increase the height or the seating capacity. They introduce a limited bulk. So for instance, this balcony here, it'll enclose that. You can probably see it better here. It will enclose that, and it'll also enclose this little bit here. So it doesn't increase any height or add any seating capacity, but it helps facilitate the wider stadium development without predetermining any future decision. So just to sum up then, the proposal meets relevant planning policy and supports the phased redevelopment of the stadium. The fence line and turnstiles will improve safety and crowd management. The replacement tree planting, there's 76 trees being proposed for replanting and an additional 10 cherry trees. That's secured to offset the removal of 19 trees, try to preserve the leafy character of Kings Park, and also the landscape condition will help with that too. The outside broadcasting area is functional, acceptable and necessary for modern broadcasting. The south stand is appropriate and reversible if the expansion doesn't proceed. The diverted cycle path is suitable and maintains that important link. Car parking impacts can be satisfactorily mitigated, and the biodiversity net gain of 10% can be achieved through on-site measures and through purchase of additional units. And the minor west stand infills are acceptable in design and amenity terms. So I'm recommending this for approval with delegated authority to the head of planning for the final wording of the conditions in the section 106. As there will be some slight amendments to the conditions. Most of them, it's because we've got documents already that would normally be submitted after a decision to try and remove any pre-commencement conditions. So, for instance, dust management. We've got a dust management plan. So that will need to change from you need to provide this before you commence to you need to comply with this document if the council believes that document is suitable, obviously. And there is another one, the noise condition number 24. I thought I had drafted it in accordance with the licensing terms, and I haven't. Apparently, the license is for a PA system from 9 AM till 11 PM. So that would need changed as well. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Summers. So now to speakers, please, Ms Holyoke.
Thank you, Chair. So we have two local residents first who wish to speak. Mr Nick Day, followed by Mr Gavin Tew. Whenever you're ready.
Hi everyone, hopefully you can hear me okay and possibly see us if we're on screen. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
cool.
Loud and clear.
Great stuff, thank you. Great, firstly, thank you very much for having us. It's great to see you and we really appreciate the chance to be here today. My name is Nick Day and this is my wife Kat, and we've lived in Middleton Gardens for 13 years now. Our son Travis is at Avonwood School and we love being part of the Kings Park community. As your photo showed a moment ago, we live very close to Bournemouth and we share a wall with the football club. Middleton Gardens backs right onto it. I just want to highlight that I and the majority of Middleton Gardens residents we're big football fans. We really like living next to the football stadium and we're very excited to see AFCB grow and flourish. I'm happy with the vast majority of the current plans over the 3 phases, including the building a big, the big south stand, filling in the corners, creating the van zone, and the perimeter enhancements and the preparatory work that in particular is being discussed today. I recognise that these are needed to see AFCB modernise and become an established Premier League club for the long term, which we all want. My objections, I suppose, to the current plans are centred around the east stand. As we back onto it and share a wall with the stand, it's already pretty close to us, which is fine, and we knew that when we moved in, and we haven't got a problem with it. However, the current plans suggest making it up to 5 metres taller and 8 metres closer to our house, which would have a hugely detrimental impact on our community. Based on AFCB modelling, that's going to reduce light into my house by 30%. It will stop us seeing the sky from our front windows, as well as creating a claustrophobic, oppressive feeling in our community, which would be out of context with the small residential community. I don't think we're being too unjust in our objections on these grounds, and I'm fairly certain anyone else facing similar oppressive development would raise objections as well. And I hope that, I think the planning law exists to prevent development being imposed haphazardly and oppressively upon communities. And I hope this process will support us with that. Fortunately, we believe a solution exists, and we propose increasing the expansion of the West Stand instead, which wouldn't impact local residents, and it would still meet all of the commercial and capacity needs of the club, which we think represents a real positive win-win outcome for everybody. Pleasingly, after recent engagement with MP Tom Hayes, AFCB have confirmed that no final decisions on the stadium design have been made, and that additional design options are a possibility, with the possibility of developing other stands such as the West Stand. And they pointed to this planning process to help sort of bring about those discussions. I hope that these meetings, along with our recent planning responses, can emphasise to BCP that a win-win outcome is feasible and achievable here, and to work with AFCB to expand the West Stand, leaving the East Stand as it is, which will see AFCB continue to work well within and integrate within the community effectively and sensibly, while achieving the growth ambitions that we all wholeheartedly support. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and next, Gavin.
It's fine. I support what Nick said. Mine was more objection to the East Stand, so I'll say that in a call more to do with that one. Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of the applicant, we have Jim Frivola, the applicant, and Peter Lamb, the agent, if you'd like to come forward and speak whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman, fellow members. Thank you for having us. On behalf of Bill Foley and our entire organization, it's our pleasure to be here today and appreciate everyone's support. This is an exciting time to be speaking to the Planning Committee about this project. It represents the future of AFC Bournemouth in a lot of different ways, and a commitment to our home at Dean Court, at Kings Park, and Vitality Stadium. All of those are really important factors for us. The enabling works are a relatively small part of the overall project and the expansion. This is just really the first phase of our vision to transform the Vitality. It's a big thing that we're working on. The formal planning for the final project will be submitted here in the coming days, and it's ready to be live. We've already expanded the Performance Center and built a brand new Performance Center, and what we're planning for Vitality overall, from an investment perspective, is overall approximately 100 million pounds investment into the town, into the community, and into BCP. And really, it shows our ambition to be a top performing club, not only in the Premier League, but as Bill Foley has talked about often, our ambition to qualify for European competitions and really grow the footprint for the football club, driving more visitors here, more opportunity from an economy for people to come into BCP. So that's been really important for us. From my perspective and from Bill's perspective, however, the biggest advantage is, as you talked about, Francis, getting 9 or 10,000 more people access to the game, and 93% of those seats that we're proposing to add are going to be GA seats. So it's not so much necessarily about hospitality, but it's about bringing Bournemouth supporters to the project and what we're working on. I want to thank, there's a lot of people in the room and the folks that we've collaborated on between the club, folks at Savills. I know Peter's been working hard on it, his team, and really a joint approach that we've had with multiple officers from the council, input from the councillors themselves. We really appreciate all the hard work on it. This is a joint effort, and we don't take that lightly. So we're really excited to have been working with a lot of people that are also in the room today. The club's ready to deliver this project. I don't know if they've ever gotten to this stage before in talking about an expansion. We're well prepared. The funding's in place from the owner. He's shown the commitment to the club, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch. And the perfect example is the Performance Center that opened this past year. And we are ready to transform the Vitality and make it something that BCP can be proud of. So from our perspective, we're excited about this. It's an ambitious project, a lot of work to be done here over the next 2 to 3 years, and we're up to the task. So from my end, up the cherries.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, Chairman and fellow councillors. Jim has covered a lot very eloquently, but I just want to reiterate a couple of points. It has been quite an intensive period for the last 9 months working on this project from a standing start. And I'd just like to commend the officers and the other members of the council that we've engaged with, because I think it's been a really positive working relationship and we've come a long way. And in due course, you'll see in the main application as well, which comprises the main expansion works. So we're very grateful for that. Just touch on a couple of drivers for the project, because I think it is important to understand the wider context. Although being very clear, this is about the enabling works, but it is the first part of the wider expansion project. Vitality is the smallest Premiership stadium at just over 11,000. And clearly there's a number of fans who want to watch live football but aren't able to access tickets on a regular basis. Aspects of the stadium also don't meet the Premier League and UEFA requirements, and that's around some aspects of safety, accessibility and media operations. And they have special dispensation, but it needs to be upgraded, and now they've started the project. The emphasis is on that happening as soon as possible. A really big part of this is about improving the experience on match day for fans, for players, for staff, for anyone at the stadium. And for those of you who have been to the stadium, clearly there are improvements that can be made, and the club's really looking forward to delivering those. Also, it's about being able to generate revenue. That's really important. The club needs to be financially self-sustaining, and having access to more seat packages, hospitality packages is a really important part of that. Importantly as well, the club wants to stay in its ancestral home in Kings Park, Dean Court. That's really important. This provides an opportunity to do that. And also, really looking forward to creating a project that everyone could be proud of. And I think that's important for the future. I'm conscious that I've just gone over 5 minutes. I can stop there if you like.
Yes, that'll be fine. Thank you for equality. Thank you.
And in terms of ward councillors, we have Councillor Sharon Carr-Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I would actually like to start by saying I've actually come here not to object to the application, even though I had to log it as such, because I support the expansion of the stadium very much in principle. But I'm here because I wanted to be sure that the residents that I represent don't suffer increased antisocial parking and poor traffic management as a result of it. And I wasn't going to address the committee originally, but then parking issues became part of the application. And that means that I felt I should start my representations as well. I know that the relevant officers have been in lengthy negotiations with the club over how to achieve an extra 10,000 fans at the Vitality without causing further traffic and parking issues. And that's no mean feat. As it stands, with this application, we're still looking at losing over 150 parking spaces, and that will have a knock-on effect. So we all know that a lot of this will hinge on effective public transport measures, and I urge the club to embrace all options. We'll also need additional enforcement, patrols, marshalling and staff with the power to move people on and instruct people who might want to make poor driving or parking decisions in how they might do better. I welcome the proposals for CSAS officers along with the rest of the measures proposed. But the geographical focus is too narrow in my view. I understand that the roads in the immediate vicinity of the ground are most affected, but they are not the only ones. Dozens of roads are currently used for overspill parking. Many of them are in my ward. We regularly suffer the block drives, unsafe junctions and illegal parking that comes with every match. And it's my view that the measures currently being proposed don't offer as much protection or assistance that my residents require. I'd like the club to be aware that I've had many representations already from residents who feel that any controlled parking zone should be extended to their roads or other parking restrictions introduced to ensure they can still use their roads and drives. They also want increased enforcement and to be reassured that the club has understood that they are affected too and expect to be part of any measures that are introduced. We'll be taking the opportunity afforded by the introduction of these measures, of this stage of the planning, for the enabling works to assess the situation and the effects through the rest of the season. I think it would be sensible to see this as the first stage of the traffic and parking measures that will be needed, and the further planning application will give us the opportunity to make additional proposals. It would be really helpful if the club was also thinking in those terms. I hope the Transport Working Group will be given the teeth it will need to ensure changes are made when they're needed. I also hope that sufficient funds via the Sustainable Transport Fund will be set aside so that should further traffic measures be required, this can be actioned as quickly as possible. My residents are generally supportive of the stadium's expansion, as am I. We just want it to be done so that they don't suffer, and in fact, as Jim has just said, in a way that means we can improve their current matchday experience and make this a development that all of Bournemouth is truly proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I've just been alerted by Councillor Williams that he's in the room and would like to address the committee as well.
Yes, Councillor Williams, if you want to come forward.
Good morning. Thank you, colleagues, for hearing me today. As the ward councillor for Little Down, we obviously suffer the most from parking issues. But today we're here or you're here to listen to the enabling works and not the greater stadium issues. However, I would agree with everything that Councillor Carr-Brown just said. In fact, she said most of what I wanted to say. I've been ward councillor since 2011, so I've got a bit of history with the club, good and bad. It was really good from 2011 to 2014-ish. We used to have regular communication with the club, and they would consult with us. That all stopped, and since then we don't really get to talk to them unless I really push it, and then it's an email. We as councillors need consultation on a regular basis with the club, both before and after the expansion of the current stadium, because our residents suffer. Past experience says the club doesn't listen and doesn't seem to care about their immediate neighbours, and I'm talking about our residents in Littledown. It's also an issue elsewhere, but as you heard from Councillor Carr-Brown, they're tackling their issues. Our issues are similar. I live in the ward. In fact, I live very close to AFC Bournemouth, and I've had on numerous occasions people trying to park and succeeding in my driveway, which doesn't allow me to go out on match days. And that's just a small issue. Regarding Middleton Gardens, we can come to that later, but I have a lot of sympathy. I was on a ward walk with my colleague and the chief executive this week, and I showed him actually where it was planned in Middleton Gardens, and he agreed with us that it's just not on. So I would ask that everybody look at that again when the time comes. My biggest issue is parking. However, noise does play a big part. We hear a drum going thump, thump, thump for 90 minutes every single match day, and that's just one stand close to where we are. I don't know what the noise issue is like elsewhere, but it's pretty horrendous. I worry about the noise from the enabling works because I can't think that they're going to be silent. Is there any sort of mitigation for noise? Other than that, I would just ask that the club be good residents and, good neighbours to the residents of Littledown and Iford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one final thing. I'm not anti-football. I'm not anti-AFC Bournemouth. I'm very pro-residents.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms Summers, was there anything you wanted to come back on from what you've heard from various speakers?
Yeah, it would be helpful to first talk about the residents' comments, which are obviously completely taken into account. But this application doesn't actually increase the height at all or do anything to the east and north stand. The next application will, so that should be going live in the next couple of weeks. And I hope that they'll be putting in their responses to that, and I'll be able to consider that again for that application. As for, the other issues that are clear that are coming out is there's clearly a parking issue, which obviously we're fully aware of, hence why we've done quite a bit of work on this. There's quite a few conditions regarding this. So if you look from condition 3 to condition 8, they're all to do with highways. And we also are requiring things via the section 106. So for instance, we are securing marshals, so, and some of them will be CSAS. So that's basically people with the ability to move people on if they're, illegal parking. There's a TRO going to be in place by the next season, and that will be to install some double yellow lines wherever there aren't double yellow lines, essentially, around Kings Park, the roundabout that goes on to sort of Gloucester Road by the leisure centre. There's CSAS officers proposed in some of the surrounding streets, although I appreciate it's not going as far as Queen's Park. There's a transport working group. Now, this has been proposed to us, and it is what is done in quite a few other stadiums around the UK, where essentially what the club are proposing here and in the full redevelopment is needs a modal shift. Okay, so we need to get people out of the cars, we need to get people walking, cycling, and on the bus, essentially. That's the overall key to the redevelopment of the stadium. So through that's going to take a number of years. That's culture change. You know, that takes quite a while to install into people. So the transport working group will be able to meet together and identify issues that have arisen through this sort of modal shift as it goes on. Say something's not working, okay, the transport working group is the opportunity to address that. And so, yes, we're looking for teeth for that transport working group. Excellent words. So we want a pot of money so that if we, if there's something that we need immediately done and no one's willing to do it, we can do it ourselves. But there's also a wording that needs to be dealt with through with our legal team to make sure that when we're not, the council's basically not going to be left with something that's poor. That's a situation as a result of the enabling works happening. So that's what the transport working group will do. It will consist of people like the Dorset Police, thank you, the council, South Western Rail, National Rail, Go South Coast, as well as the club. And then there's other people that might be brought in on occasion, such as the Sovereign Centre or Beryl Bikes. Whenever those kind of issues need to be addressed, they'll be brought into that meeting. Minimum of 2 meetings a year, but we're busy negotiating that at the minute, probably pre-season. And then maybe mid-season. But essentially, that's more of a long-term thing. The enabling works lasts until the start of the next season. So for anyone who isn't a football fan, let me just explain what that means. So between, say, if they get a positive decision today, say when that's issued to the end of this football season, that consists of about 6 home matches. Okay, there's no other events going on that are large events. They might have conferences, but none of the, nothing like 11,000 people come into the stadium. So that'll last 6 matches. Then the closed season, that means there's no football games, lasts between June and August. Okay, so there's no matches there. So the enabling works will finish at the end of the closed season in August. I've actually got a graphic that I can put up if that helps, because it's quite hard to get your head around. Would that help? Yeah? Bear with me while I share my screen. Aha, here we go. So the football season ends at June. The closed season is between June and August. The implementation of the enabling works will finish by August, or 17th of August, I think it is. At which point, we expect the expansion application, the next application, to have been decided. So if that's an approval, then that will have whatever mitigations needed from that point onwards. If it's refused, then that's why we've got this transport working group, and another TRO actually proposed for in the event that the expansion app doesn't come forward. The other TRO, sorry, traffic regulation order, will look at restricting residence parking. So that look at controlled parking zones, and that will have to come forward if we're left with 155 car parking spaces, or sorry, the loss of 155 car parking spaces without the expansion app coming forward, because the expansion app includes all sorts of measures for the modal shift. Does that explain the parking?
Yes, I think that's perfect as a stage. So I think if we open up to questions.
Yes,
then,
sorry, I'll shush now.
We'll go
Thank
from
you.
there. No. So councillors, Councillor Slade.
Thank you. So I get there's no TRO this year, but what is or what might be the trigger for formal intervention should the parking impact exceed predictions? What might be the trigger for us to address that non-TRO?
So just to clarify, one, I think you're probably referring to the residence parking restrictions TRO, because there is a TRO going to be in place for double yellow lines, but the other, if you're referring to the residence parking restrictions, we've got the CSAS officers, but they just, you know, they're mainly around the grounds. Or we've also got the appointment of an additional enforcement officer for the council as well, and then on some of the surrounding residential streets to try and, sorry, yeah, Joss?
Yeah. Hello, just to say that under this application, we're only considering the loss of 155 parking spaces. So we've got the existing baseline, so how it is at the moment, but this application, whilst we know it impacts local residents, it's a balance, and it's about trying to manage the loss of the 155 parking spaces on site at the stadium. Now, the transport consultants have put forward a lot of information about CSAS officers, which can have the authority to actually move vehicles on. So what we don't want to do is wait until they're causing disruption to then get issued a ticket by our civil enforcement officers. We want stewards with the authority to actually move cars on so they're not parking in inappropriate locations. And so we have secured that, and also with basically enhanced double yellow lines really to try and tighten those parking enforcement issues. But I would say the main larger residential parking zone that we are looking at will be part of the expansion application coming forward, because obviously we've got about another 10,000 people to facilitate, and we know there's an impact on local residents, and so the larger TRO will be with the expansion, because it wouldn't be proportionate for 155 spaces to be lost to trigger, you know, absolutely everything. So it is an interim over the next six matches.
Thank you. And do we know how many CSAS officers? Is there going to be what officers? I get plural. We're going to have 2. We're going to have 10. Any indications as to how many we got?
I think it's in the note that was in the addendum yesterday. I'm just reading through it now. So we've got marshals to be located at Kings Park Road, Holdenhurst Road roundabout, and Gloucester Road in Christchurch. Kings Park Drive, Gloucester Road roundabout, Leisure Centre, South Car Park, West Car Park. Yeah, just having a look.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
11.
It's on the one slide that I didn't put on the PowerPoint presentation. There's 11. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's on the same parking issue, if I may. So I'd be interested in understanding exactly what teeth this Transport Advisory Group is going to have, and how it might be able to ensure that any concerns and adjustments are actually implemented. But my other question about that also is, I've read the people that are going to be involved in the Transport Working Group, but I don't see any reference to either residents or councillors. Now, it's likely to be those people that are going to be the first people who raise concerns about traffic or parking or whatever, and I'm anxious to ensure that those voices are heard somehow within that process. So I'm just wondering what we might be able to do in order that that happens. So that's that question. But on the same paper, this is on the agenda supplement paper, that it sets out the issues to do with the Transport Working Group, which I've just referred to. But it also has a couple of paragraphs about the post-enabling works, which is what we've just been discussing. And I'm interested in understanding whether we would be able to apply those post-enabling works to pre-enabling works.
I understand the logic of why you have suggested this, but I think we do have to recognise that parking is a problem now. And the loss of 155 parking spaces is not going to help the problems that we have now. So I'm just asking really whether we would be able to ensure that some of that post-enabling work is done earlier, exactly understanding the reasons why it's been suggested in this way because of the impact of the, the larger stadium, get that. But in order to address concerns, I'm just wondering whether we might be able to kind of adjust the timing of some of that. While I've got the mic, Chair, I think I probably ought to just record my thanks to Francis and the team for all of the work that they've been doing and for keeping us so well informed, and indeed to the club and Savills for their willingness to engage with us. So thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say. In terms of problems now, obviously we can't do anything about the problems that are happening now. It has to be, for planning, it has to be a problem that's come about as a result of the planning application. However, adjusting the timings is perfectly acceptable. Yes, if we could have a post-season, we could have we want the first meeting to be post-season or at the start of the enabling works, which would be rather quick. But yeah, that's doable. I can write that into the section 106, and then Joss is going to.
Could I just go back on the transport working group? I totally agree. I think ward councillors as a minimum need to attend a transport working group, but I also think we need a representative from green spaces, so our parks team, because obviously Kings Park isn't just a football stadium. We have other uses as well there, other community uses, and I think it'd be really important to have a representative from green spaces as well, just because of the impact on Kings Park and that there are other uses. So I agree, a minimum, ward councillors as well as all the, transport bods to at least get that invitation.
So Councillor Canavan, did that answer? Yes, thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Really brief question. In the mitigation, just confirmation there's no re-provision of any of these lost parking spaces anywhere, either in the
No, there isn't. No, there's a potential for reconfiguration, or the lorry park at the minute. People tend to park a bit funny when they first come in there. So, however, the first person parks there dictates how many spaces you can get in. So they're going to marshal that to try and maximise the spaces there. But there's no mitigation in the form of more parking spaces elsewhere. Formal, yeah.
Yeah, my second part is on the CSAS officers. AFCB would cover the cost of those CSAS officers.
Councillor Gillett. Yes.
So understanding the parking, one of the things which seems a bit odd to me is that during the week, people park in Vitality and they wander off to the employers like JP Morgan and the hospital. But just those car parks, there's 1,500 car parking spaces at JP Morgan. They don't seem to use that to utilise it the other way. And is there any way that can be incorporated into the into the transport plan in any way? Yeah.
I think obviously it's all in the melting pot. Then if you take that away and have a word with Ms. Holbrook and.
I think we have explored, we've asked the club to explore those kind of opportunities. I think there's a security, and I think that's what we were told there.
Oh, well, JP Morgan have their own on-site car park for staff, so we want to be obviously encouraging active travel for members, staff to be travelling there. So my understanding is that the club take ownership of the car park.
Yeah.
So it's then a private matter. So what I'm concerned about is on match days where we have at the moment 10,500 people coming to the stadium, and the impact of the net loss of 155 spaces, which is roughly about 30%, and what impact that has over and above the base. I wouldn't be able to answer other users using the car park on non-match days, because obviously that's a lot less people than on a match day, which is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I guess all I'm really thinking of is, you know, there are little minibuses run by Britannia that go from the Vitality car park up to JP Morgan, because they've got 5,000 employees on site and only 1,500 parking spaces. Yeah. But why those 1,500 car parking spaces on a Saturday are empty and there aren't little buses going the other way? That's my thought. I know how that could be incorporated into the planning. And there was one other thing as well. So it's a completely separate question. One of the things that came up with the objectives was the East Stand, and a lot of the objections were to the East Stand. When I actually looked at this specific planning application, it's not actually. Am I right in saying it doesn't actually? Although there's prep work, there's nothing. We're not actually approving the East Stand on this, are we?
You are not, no. That will be dealt with in the next application. So there's no changes to the east or the north stand, or the south, or the temporary south stand for that matter. There's the south stand foundations and slight infills to the west regarding the stands.
So clarifying that. Councillor Salmon.
So I've got a few questions, not only on parking, but on parking. Can I just check then, can we strengthen that condition potentially to explicitly state the membership of the working group, the TRO group, whatever that stands for, to include ward councillors and somebody from Green Spaces? And then just to get all my questions out of the way, or at least get started on them, actually I think an important point is the objection from highways. I just want to check, is that still an objection, or has that been addressed in this supplementary package that came out today?
So my first consultation response was an objection, because the application involves the realignment of the shared foot and cycle path. So, you know, the council's priority is obviously active travel and trying to encourage the shift away from the private motor vehicle. And we spent a lot of money creating the existing path, which is there, that runs through Kings Park. And we have a counter on there, and roughly 900 local residents and children use it every day, commuting to school, work, JP Morgan, for example, hospital. And it's a disappointment that it has to be changed, because it's very new and it's well used. And as I said, it's on the desire line. And so what the objection is that, you know, it's no longer going to be on the desire line, so it is not as good as what we've got at the moment. We also have emergency vehicles who will be able to use the path, and at the moment no vehicles use the path. So that formed part of the objection, and the loss of parking with no mitigation was the objection. Now, when that was relayed back to the applicant, further information was put forward to put forward that mitigation for the loss of the 155 parking spaces, which includes the use of the stewards, the CSAS officers, and the other conditions that are put as part of the application. So yes, there is still an overall objection, because it's not in line with local planning policies and sort of the council's aims. However, if the application is to be approved, I would say it is the best option we're going to get if that's the only place the OB area can go. And so it has been designed to the best it can with the area we have. It's just a shame that the development has to go over existing infrastructure.
So it sounds like then there is still an objection that hasn't been addressed. So this application could technically be refused on, I think, CS14 and CS18. Or yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right, isn't it? And I think because of that, I've got some additional questions then about the transport impact of this, because I think there are also safety concerns, because we're just looking at the enabling works and so forth. I think we've also got, where is it? yeah, page 44, I think 148, 149. There's the risk of away coaches, things like that, and I don't like it. So we still have those objections as well. Those still sit. And these are objections, some of them are under the NPPF, and some of them sound like they're under our local plan. And I know normally when we talk about our local plan, we talk about how it is out of date, and on the tilted balance, we can ignore the local plan, or we have to ignore it in the favour of development for housing numbers. But can I just check, do the objections here under the local plan, are they at all impacted by the fact our local plan is so out of date?
Well, policy CS18 encourages cycling and walking, as does the NPPF. So what I've said in the comments is that it's not as, the realigned path is not going to be as good as what we have at the moment. However, it won't, on balance, deter people who are cycling and walking. It's just that we are getting a lesser standard, construction standard. We are making sure that it is fit for purpose. We've got condition to make sure that that officers agree to the construction details to make sure that we get a robust and a well constructed shared path along there. We have ensured that it's minimum 5 meters wide. At some areas we have 7 meters wide. So it's as I said, it's not as good as what we have. However, it won't stop cycling and walking. It's just a shame it's not on that desire line that we have currently with existing infrastructure.
Just to follow up then, can we add a condition where we're not able to keep the desired line, that there is monitoring of the usage? So we've already done monitoring as part of this application. We've identified 900 users per day. Can we look to put a condition on where, say, there's a reduction of a certain percent, so say it drops 10%, say it drops down to 800 or whatever, that then the applicant would have to implement at their own cost some kind of improvement. We would have to look at, okay, this is having a negative impact on our sustainable travel plans. Because of that, we are going to have to go back to the applicant and they're going to have to come up with a better plan to put in place here. Because in some respects, we're lucky that this is just for commencement works and we do have the chance to go, all right, well, we tried this to mitigate the loss of the desired line. Now that hasn't worked, we can see it hasn't worked. Now we're going to have to ask you to go back to the drawing board and come back with something that is more suitable. Can we condition like that in any way to help address that objection?
So it's an existing BCP counter on there. So absolutely, we will be monitoring how, as we can monitor every day, what the usage is. So we can monitor what post-development after the new shared path is constructed, what that usage is. I'm not sure how we can, as you were saying, go back to the applicant to say there has been a reduction, because ultimately if they have planning permission, then I'm not sure how you can go back to them. However, I would say that we have got that data that is a BCP asset that we can check on that usage in the future.
Do you mind if I just come in there? I think we are content that the route is acceptable. So I think that there isn't any improvements to be made to it apart from not allowing the development to go ahead. But that it does, in the plan and balance, the benefits of the proposal outweigh that slight harm, and it is a slight harm. So we don't believe that there is the need to improve that. However, let's go back to the monitoring. There will be monitoring done as part of, as standard, but also through the Transport Working Group. I don't know what improvements that could be done to the actual route itself. I don't propose that we require anything like that, but it will be monitored. In terms of and in the travel plan, in terms of the local plan echoes what's in the National Plan and Policy Framework, so we can consider those policies up to date. There's the tilted balance, you're right, doesn't fall into this because there's no housing proposed. So hopefully that clarifies things. Or confuses, hopefully not.
So yeah, I've just got a couple more questions then. So to be clear, it doesn't sound like we can strengthen the condition around active travel anymore, which I'm not keen on, to be honest. I feel like necessity is the mother of invention. And if the developer is told it is absolutely necessary that whatever fix is put in place for not following the desired line has to maintain or increase the number of users, otherwise this doesn't go through. I'm frustrated we can't condition something like that, because I think that would be a good condition to put on. And obviously I'm not predetermined, but like everybody else in this room, I want to see Bournemouth get a bigger stadium. I see that would be a positive thing. The vehicle access and that conflict that's present. Is there no way we can simply condition that there's going to be no vehicle access serving the compound, serving the works, that crosses that route? Because I get that the route has to change, but I can't see why we're not firmer on the conditioning. At the moment, it sounds like that risk is going to be mitigated through marshals and so forth. But I just think actually the standard in the MPPF is you design these out. You don't manage these risks out, you design them out. And I'd like to be absolutely confident that we've exhausted the possibility of designing them out before we fall back on managing.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and we have worked very, very hard over the last 9 months to try and do just that. However, in my report, it kind of goes into this, doesn't it? Where there's the away coaches are going to be parking in the, that area within the outside broadcasting area. So they will be, in fact, have I got a map that might help? They will be actually coming down here in front of the stadium. They'll drop off their players in the front of the stadium. And then they'll continue coming down here, actually within the fence line. They'll be marshalled out of the fence line and then into here. So that's actually not, the away coaches are not using or going over this cycle pedestrian path. The broadcasting vehicles will. They'll be directed up here and into the outside broadcasting area. So there's sliding doors at the minute. This will be marshalled. We don't believe that it would be a significant impact. So let's remind ourselves as well how many matches there are a year. So at the minute, there's about 25, 28 matches a year. If they get into Europe, you could maximum, you're talking sort of 50, 52 matches a year. So this is 52 times, around 52 maximum times of the year. On those occasions, that would have to be marshalled. And we believe that that's suitable. I've had no highways objections to that. Urban design didn't like the thought of it, but we've got the construction of the cycle path. So that's not going to be, torn up through vehicles going over it. We've got it so that it's going to be suitable for vehicular use as well, and that is conditioned. I don't know what else I can say to give you any reassurance, but yeah, thank you.
Could I just go back to your first comment about sort of like having the lesser standard path, shall we say? What I said in the comments is that if we're accepting a lesser standard shared path, then we do expect to see, as part of the expansion application where we have the mitigation to because of the increase in seats, in spectators, we want to see much better cycle and pedestrian improvements to the wider area. So what I'm saying is that if we accept, we are going to have a shared path that's no longer on the desire line, so it's not as good as what we've got. We want to see better when it comes to the expansion application, so that there is more improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. And that's something that I am negotiating on, obviously, with the expansion application. but as part of this application, this is what we have before us.
Sorry, just one more thing I've been reminded of. The media as well, they arrive about 72 hours before the match. So, and I think up to 3 hours after the match or something like that is when they leave. So, it's not like there's going to be a load of fans there. So there's going to be a conflict with the fans. The conflict is going to be with anyone using that cycle ped path, which is why it needs to be marshalled. However, because it's being marshalled, and because it's very clear that it's a pedestrian and cycle path, it's not, it's not a road. They will be going very, very slow as well. Don't know if that provides any comfort, but thanks.
So just two more tiny questions then. Just on that, my assumption is, much as this is expanding a football stadium, if you look at a lot of the clubs that have these larger stadiums, actually they are not used solely for football matches, and so forth. Is there the possibility within the current, could that stadium currently be used for other things, or is it like, would there need to be a change of use, or could there potentially be, actually, the stadium is now being used every night for different events?
Yeah, so we're not expecting Taylor Swift, but but the stadium does have a license for music events, for instance. They do also have conferences. I think they do proms and things like that. The conferences and the proms, obviously, a lot fewer numbers of people who are talking there. But as for music events, yes, they do have the ability to do that. Now, for the expansion application, that's something I thought, well, we really need to think about sort of timings and things like that in conditions. If you're suggesting that we need to do that in this one, I'm not sure whether it would stand up to the condition test, because they already have that license. That's not changing. The only thing that's changing is like the fence line, the OB comp. So I don't think it would be defensible to add a condition such as that, such as timing for music events, for instance.
Okay, and then final topic I wanted to cover was that there is no. So wait, what are we missing? Yeah, an environmental statement was not required. I was surprised that an environmental statement wasn't required. These will be major works. I just wondered if that, again, was something that we could condition. I like the idea of us actually being really across what the environmental impact would be.
Yeah, so the environmental statement wasn't required because although some of although there will be an impact, undoubtedly, we believe that we could deal with more by condition. So, for instance, there's definitely going to be transport impacts if you're adding 10,000 more seats to the stadium. We believe that we can deal with that via conditions or Section 106. For this application, an environmental statement definitely wouldn't be required because it's just preparatory works, so it definitely wouldn't fall in under that remit. However, if you're talking about improvements in terms of energy efficiency and things like that, we could ask for something for the west stand, but it would be very, very marginal. Those the improvements that could be made, sort of efficient, water efficient taps and things like that. But we also don't have policy base to base that on. So I don't think we could do much there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rice.
Hello, thank you. With regards to the cycle path diversion, there's quite a curve where you've got the change in surfacing. I was just wondering whether it was considered about making that slightly more direct.
We did look at that, but it would have involved removing some of the trees, and we thought on balance it's not that bad, because at that point it's really quite wide, so you're not doing a 90-degree turn on your bike because the path is so wide. I think I'll leave it to the transport expert, but in case I'm saying something wrong.
Thanks, Francis. So we've negotiated quite a few revisions of the realigned path, and we were very clear that it needed to be as close to the desire line as possible, to link up the existing path. We didn't want to see it go really far around. And so, yes, there is a curve. It's not ideal. However, they have widened the path near the OB van, which does, I keep calling it a van, sorry, a area, which is sort of 7 metres. So overall, it's sort of 5 metres, and then it does widen to 7. So where you will be travelling along the shared path, on balance, that curve, I don't think will be as harsh as the drawing shows. However, I have acknowledged it's not ideal and it's not as good as what we have at the moment, hence the overall objection.
Yeah, well, my opinion has changed slightly in terms of removal of trees and replanting them elsewhere in order to accommodate cycle infrastructure. We've done it for decades for large roads, but there seems to be the aversion to do it for cycleways. And for me, that just looks as if we're creating an extra sort of visual barrier, like, because it's not a diagonal, it's a curve and a curve. But as long as you've considered that. With regards to the outside broadcasting compound, with relation to that curve, and just can you clarify what type of structure will be up on that red line right next to that curve? Because obviously the visibility coming around that corner, and it's not a cycle path and a separate pedestrian area, it's a shared use. That visibility there is incredibly important.
Yeah, thank you. So hope you can see this. You've got the cycle pedestrian path that comes around here. All this is a fence line. This is just a fence. There's nothing in the fence. There's no structures around it. You have structures here. So I think that's the sort of temporary toilets, welfare facilities. This is Hawkeye, which looks like a small ISO container. And this is GRP compound, which is essentially where they plug in. So they're the structures. They're on that northern boundary with the so along here you don't have anything. However, on a match day, you are going to have that filled with vehicles.
So I was just wondering whether maybe it can't be added to the planning condition, but for maybe the applicants to consider to increase the visibility there, just adding a couple of bollards into that corner so that cars aren't parking or vans aren't reversing right into that corner. Like a front of a bonnet, a metre back from the line is very different visibility to a van reversing right up to the edge. So it's just, maybe that's a practical point of view to be considered.
So no vehicles will be using the path other than emergency vehicles.
So just within that parked within that compound, reducing the visibility.
I see. Sorry. I thought you meant the actual on the shared path.
And then, can you clarify for me the barrel parking and sort of what influence there is on this application? I can see some barrel parking quite far away from the pedestrian entrance to the stadium, but on our parking standard supplements, it says that visitor parking for bicycles should be good natural surveillance and in the closest possible proximity to the pedestrian entrance to the building they serve. And this is something that frequently comes up, is that the parking for users of bicycles or three-wheeled cycles are placed as a secondary consideration. And I'm worried this is occurring here.
Just to mention that the plans before you are for the enabling works application, which requires the relocation of the existing barrel facilities because of the hoarding and because of the works to go on. So this is temporary. This is not what we expect long term. Long term, we expect much better cycle facilities. However, I can't secure that because I haven't got any net increase in fans for this stadium. But when we're looking at the expansion, absolutely, we'll be looking at cycle parking, barrel parking, to be as close as possible to accesses. However, there's actually 3 drawings and barrel moves with each. And we are in discussions with Beryl and they're fully on board. So we're not losing any facilities. And the cycle parking shown on the plans is replacement cycle parking. So we're not seeing any more, because we can't ask for it as part of this application because there's no extra people. However, it is a temporary solution for the duration of the construction works.
Sorry, just to come in about the proximity of the barrel bikes to the pedestrian entrance to the stadium. There's turnstiles within the fence line all the way along. They're difficult to see on the drone. Yeah, so the barrel bikes are here. What picture can I use that's best? See these? Can you see these little blue bits along the pink fence line? Sorry if anyone's colourblind. They're turnstiles. So you've got barrel bikes here, you've got an entrance there, you've got an entrance there. So you do have several entrances very close to the barrel bikes.
Just on that note, it does strike me odd that we are losing however many car parking spaces, but we're not actually equating that with the fact that that may in itself create a modal shift and therefore require more car parking, cycle spaces. I get the difference between this application and the other application, but for me that makes a logical step for us to require, but maybe not in planning law. My last point is just with regards to the transport working group. If we've got transport providers there, such as rail and bus, then we should also be having the provider for electric scooters and electric bicycles on there. So it doesn't have to be Beryl, but whilst Beryl are providing that provision, then it should be whoever is providing that provision should be on that group.
Yeah, they are on the list as well. Yeah.
Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just a very quick question on the environmental impact, if I may. So this report and the presentation sets out the intentions in relation to addressing biodiversity net gain. I'm not asking you to tell me what the details are, but I'm just asking you, can we expect to see a different set of biodiversity net gain requirements when we see the expansion application?
Yeah, there is a slight difference. So we're content with what's been proposed for this one, so that's accepted. For the next application, we're expecting a lot more landscaping throughout the car parks, so that will provide more on-site biodiversity net gain than there is in this one. Yeah.
Okay, so while we were talking about parking, Mr. Lamb did indicate he added some extra information for the committee. Are you okay for him to speak just on solely about parking, Mr. Lamb?
Thank you, Chairman. I thought it might just be helpful on the subject of what can happen in terms of parking when those spaces are temporarily lost. The club is in quite progressed discussions with the Sovereign Centre, who you note are on the Transport Working Group as a kind of participant, and that is to effectively make available 400 spaces at the Sovereign Centre car park that could be pre-booked by fans. And as Jocelyn and Francis have outlined, there's going to be a communication strategy as part of the mitigation solution, where through its website and other comms, the club is going to basically be saying, you know, there's limited car parking here. Once that's all been booked up, there's other spaces that you can pre-book and go to and then walk to the stadium. So that's currently progressing well and is something which will, in my opinion, mitigate the loss of those 151 spaces temporarily. And I'm sure there'll be further discussions ongoing as part of the main works application mitigation strategy in due course.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so last question then, Councillor Salmon.
I've just got two more questions. I want to confirm one thing, which is whenever we have residents speak, I want to make sure we are properly listening to them. But I think the objection about the loss of light, things like that, that's not covered in this application. It's just about commencement works. The other thing was where we are losing that desired line, there is a chance that we approve this, we lose the desired line, and then an application comes to expand the stadium and that is refused. I just wanted to check that if that was the case, that the desired line would be restored, or do we need to condition that so that if any future application was to not go ahead, then we would get that desired line back if the stadium expansion doesn't happen?
No, you wouldn't get that back because this application also includes I've conditioned the south stand foundations to be restored if the expansion app doesn't come forward. But the OB compound, the outside broadcasting area, is needed for Premier League requirements. So that would be built, which means that, am I right in thinking the cycle line would have to go around it all still? Yeah, because it would be the fence line. Yes, it would be within the fence line. So no, we couldn't condition that. That would be restored.
If I could just if I could just mention that I did include a condition that if the expansion application isn't forthcoming, that we do finish the shared path, because the drawings, I don't know if you can share the screen, it does show it doesn't join up perfectly well with the existing. Thank you.
Here.
Yep. So there is a condition, because the expansion application, because it has more footfall, I'm able to get better pedestrian and cycle facilities. However, if the expansion application isn't coming forth, there is a condition that the applicant finishes, shall we say, and ties in with existing, because we don't want to end up with this long term. As I mentioned, this is temporary for the enabling works. However, long term, we want to see the full shared path properly constructed. So there is a condition to finalise that. However, on your first point, no, the design line wouldn't be reinstated.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we open up for debate then, Councillor.
Oh, I've been promoted. Sorry, just a final note on the Transport Working Group. The membership of that, it will be written into the section 106. So we talked about councillors' involvement. So that, and all the other involvement, will be written into the section 106. I just wanted to make that clear.
That's useful. So, Councillor Slade, did you indicate? Oh, Councillor Tarling.
Thank you very much. We've gone around a lot of discussion here, and I think that the key point for me is picking up this is 6 home matches only. I've used the car park in front of the Vitality Statement. I've been to a number of events that aren't football matches. I've been to football matches as well there. So, you know, but we are talking 6 matches, 6 events effectively. So I think if we just bear that in mind in our discussion, that's all we're talking about here. It's a temporary works covering 6 matches for loss of parking. Very pleased to hear that the CSAS officers are being covered, an opportunity there. I've actually sent Councillor Williams a link to Just Park so he can rent out his driveway and suggest that perhaps he encourages his neighbours to do the same, because I have actually parked not on Councillor Williams' drive, but I've parked outside, not blocking any roads, but yeah, when going to home matches there. I'm very pleased to hear about the Sovereign Centre parking, noting though that on a Saturday, hopefully the Sovereign Centre will be busier. Sovereign Centre doesn't fill up even on a Saturday, the car park at the moment. So I'm very supportive of this. Appreciate that, you know, to make an omelette you've got cracks and eggs, and you know I'm happy to propose that we go along with the recommendations as laid out in by the officer.
Okay, thank you for that. It's quite early, but that's a proposal. Councillor Slade.
I'm happy to second. I was going to say the same thing. We are talking, I thought it was 8 games to come, and 3 of them are within realistic driving distance. The rest of them would strike me that they're going to be either using public transport, coaches. So I think we've got 3 games where we're going to have an issue with potentially parking. Given we've got 11 CSAS officers, it comforts me. I hear what everybody else said. I respect the answers, respect the questions. Thank you. My point. So I'm happy to second that after everybody else in the debate.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Salmon.
So I mean, one of the things that was mentioned by the applicant was that this is one of the smallest currently. in the Premier League, and there's a reason for that. It's really difficult to make this stadium any bigger given where it's situated. And what I wouldn't want to see us do is, in our enthusiasm for a bigger stadium, which I think is what a lot of people want in this town, a lot of people want on this committee, accept something that isn't of the high standard we need for our town. We are one of the most congested towns in the UK. We have a massive problem with transport. And the fact that this application is in front of us with an objection from Highways, that rings alarm bells for me, because actually we're not signing off on the expansion here, but we are signing off on the loss of the preferred walking and cycling route. And we are signing off on the introduction of what sounds like risk that can only be avoided through management rather than by design. And all it takes is one near miss, and then you see usage of that rapidly drop. And worse yet, management, there's always something that goes wrong, you know? If that risk is present and the only thing stopping it is human intervention, is a marshal in a fluorescent jacket or something like that, at some point on a cold, wet, miserable night or whatever, something is going to go wrong, and it is going to result in, you know, serious harm, the loss of life and so forth. Those two things really, really stick in my craw. They make it hard for me to support this. I would much rather, because I don't want to see the application refused, I would like to see it deferred and for it to come back with the Highways objections addressed. I do think that's possible. I think you can design your way around these problems. It's frustrating that we cannot do that here in committee through condition. I think if we could impose conditions that said, no, absolutely not, there should be no vehicle crossing that path, you know, we can design around that. If we can't put that in as a condition, if we can't condition if usage of the cycle route falls, steps are taken to address that. If we can't have those two conditions, I'm not sure I could approve this application, and I think we would have valid grounds to refuse. But given that I wouldn't want to refuse, instead I think we should be looking to defer this and get something coming back to committee that is of the high standard this town deserves. A stadium is something that is nice to have. Decent walking and cycling for a town like ours is essential if we're going to maintain a high street, maintain an economy and so forth, and even support a stadium of this size.
Okay, thank you. So we've obviously got the recommendation and second for the proposal as set out. So we'll see what the discussion goes on. Councillor Rice.
Yes, I support those general principles. However, I'm going to support the application. I think there's this application highlights, as you say, the issues that we have around transportation and the methods that we have promoted over the decades. And this is an opportunity for AFC Bournemouth to really be part of showing how they can help create a shift in how everybody moves around and increase the enjoyment of accessing sports at the stadium. Since other people have also raised the fact that it's 6 or 8 matches, I would also like to just say I'm hoping that one of those is the women's team, because recently there was a bit of debate about that. And football, yeah, well, there's a lot of inequality in there. Thank you.
Okay, so any other speakers? I'll just say on Councillor Salmon's point that conflict happens now. It happens at the BIC when there's big concerts. It happens at any other venue where you've got heavy spectators going. I don't think what I've heard from the transport officers, they're saying it's mainly focusing on the path is slightly changed. I think that was their main concerns, which I understood. But your point's taken, and maybe in the next development, the agents and the applicant will consider more aspects to make you more content. So we've got the proposal as set out by Councillor Salmon, Councillor Tarling, and seconded by Councillor Slade. Did Mr. Gold want to say?
Yeah, Chair, just to say that earlier in the discussion, I think in the questions part, there was comments about the Transport Working Group to be broadened to include representatives of such as councillors and maybe like residents, lead residents, people. So just to, and also maybe the green space team as well. So obviously the section 106 hasn't been signed yet, but if you're going to vote, it might be worth just, clarifying whether you want the section 106 to include those extra details.
Thank you for that. And I think Ms Francis did cover that, but Councillor Tully, you're happy?
Yeah, I'm happy, content with that. I think that I took it that the officer was inferring that was already implied by the delegation of powers. So I assume that will be the case.
And Councillor Slade, yep. Okay, so if we're ready to go to a vote, if you are for the application as set out, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you're against the application, show now.
None.
And abstentions?
1.
Okay, so that is as set out, approved. So thank you for that. And particularly thank the Parks team for attending and some other BCP teams for attending, but you weren't required because it was a thorough report. So thank you for that. So we just have a 10-minute comfort break. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to the Planning Committee. We're jumping in order, so we're first of all going to 6D, which is the Beach House Cafe, Muddyford Sandbanks, and that is Miss James, please.
So the application site is the Beach House Cafe in Muddyford, and the application is for a variation of the temporary consent for the siting of 4 storage containers. The variation is for conditions 1 and 2. Condition 1 to extend the period of authorised use for a further 2 years, and condition 2 to alter the conditions of the removal of the containers so that they can be potentially reused, and to vary the timing for that. And just to clarify, this application doesn't propose any physical changes to the development. Oh, just some quick addendum updates. The first update is to alter the timing of condition 2. It's a relatively simple change. It's just prior to the removal and reuse of the shipping or within 2 months of the discharge of condition request being agreed in writing. And 3, to alter the timing of condition 8 for the noise management plan, for that to be implemented in full prior to the 1st of May 2026 this summer, or within 2 months of the discharge of the condition, whichever comes first. None of those changes alter the sort of assessment or the outcome of the application. Just to cover the location of the site, it's on the Muddyford Sandspit, in around about the middle of that, and it's in the ward of East Southbourne and Tuckton. This is the location plan, again just on the left showing the location of the site, and on the right the site plan up close and the numbered shipping containers which are the subject of the main application. Again, just to note, there's no changes to the current sort of situation of these shipping containers. This is an aerial view of the site, and just to remind that this application is just about the development in the red line. It doesn't consider anything outside of that. The benches are a separate application also being considered at this committee after this. Just some site photos just to remind everyone what the site looks like at the moment, just with the temporary offer. You can see in the right-hand photo just the side of one of the shipping containers there, and that is staying the same. And just a sort of overview picture of to sort of set the context. Now just moving on to condition 1. Condition 1 imposed a time limit of 3 years for the temporary consent, and this application seeks to extend the temporary consent for a further 2 years. This would result in a total duration of 5 years with an expiry date of the 31st of December 2027. Due to the location, which is constrained and sort of remote, outstanding conditions to be discharged, tides, weather, and tourism high and low seasons, and there are some factors that could cause delay, and therefore I believe a 2-year extension of time is reasonable, considering sort of contingency. However, it's important to note the applicant has confirmed the intention to start in late 2026 after the high season's finished. Continuing the assessment of condition 1, the most important sort of topics that needed to be assessed are around the amenity of the nearby beach huts, and these have been considered further. And I've added additional conditions to better control the site for the remainder of the temporary consent period. Previously, there were no opening hours within the conditions. And so in line with the recent licensing review, I've added a condition that aligns with that. Also, as discussed at earlier committees late last year, litter has been discussed and is one of the main subjects in objection comments, and therefore I've added a litter prevention and control plan. This is similar or the same as what was approved at the October committee. And finally, a noise management plan. Again, this is very similar to what has previously been approved on the permanent permissions. My cursor's just disappeared. Moving on to condition 2, which is the scheme of removal for the containers. Condition 2 requires a detailed scheme of removal for the shipping containers, and this is similar to a demolition, construction and environment management plan, and seeks to ensure the safe removal of the shipping containers. Also, the application seeks to alter the timing trigger for the submission of these details and to include the option to reuse the shipping containers in a future development. The reason for the reuse of the shipping containers is because in the most recently approved permission for the replacement permanent Beach House Cafe that was approved in October, within that design it included the reuse of the shipping containers. They wouldn't be visible externally, they'd be enclosed within the approved cladding. So this means that the containers could potentially stay on site, but they may need to be moved and reorganised, which would require sort of heavy machinery and things. And so the wording of the condition remains the same, and all of those environmental protections would be retained. Sorry, my cursor's not working properly. There we go. So in summary, the principle of the temporary cafe is already established. The impact to the Greenbelt remains unchanged. The impact to the designated sites of special scientific interest and the site of nature conservation interest remains unchanged. The impact to character and appearance remains unchanged. The location and installation on cycle storage will be re-secured by condition, and the impact to residential amenity is better controlled in terms of opening hours, noise and litter. The alteration of condition 2 in terms of timing and to allow the reuse of the containers will not cause material harm. Therefore, overall, the application is considered acceptable and I believe should be approved subject to the conditions as discussed above.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James, for a presentation. We'll go to speakers now.
Thank you, Chair. So first up, we have Mudderford Sandbank Beach Hut Association. I'm hoping I'm getting this the right way round. Is it Claire Barr speaking on this one?
Yes, that's right.
Lovely. Whenever you're ready, Claire.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman and members, for listening to our comments. I'm the Deputy Chairman of the Mudderford Beach Hut Sandbank Association. This temporary setup and permanent replacement has been stalled for over 7 years, and we're pleased to see a specific date given to ensure the removal of the containers or reuse of the containers commences over the winter of 26-27. We're also grateful to the officer that noise and litter management conditions have been applied to address the conflict that has occurred in the past when the venue holds live music events which attract large numbers of visitors to the beach house. And our huts are in very close proximity to the beach house. We're also pleased that the officer states at 45, while officers can see the merits of a supply of toilets to the site, it's not part of the original approval, so cannot be required under this type of application. It should be noted that the recently approved scheme provides 2 customer toilets and 1 staff toilet. Since the original drainage is still available for toilets to be reinstated on the site, and the MSPHA request, as have many of the comments that have been received on the application, that members make an advisory or a request to the operators that they reinstate the toilets for the temporary setup. This would be in the best interests of the sandbank before the 2026 summer season commences. However, if members aren't happy to suggest that to the operators, if they're not reinstated on the temporary site, we suggest that the beach house is required to provide 3-hourly cleaning to the closest public toilets, Block 3, and this should apply every weekend and during school holiday dates, and that these public toilets are regularly checked throughout the operating hours by the beach house staff. This would be a reflection that the current increase in costs incurred by BCP to clean the toilets for the customers of the beach house are part funded by the beach house, who are currently providing no toilets on sites for their many customers. Thanks for listening to our comments, and I hope you'll consider them. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the applicant, we have Claire Spiller, the agent, and Richard Slater for the applicant. They're in the room if you'd like to come forward when you're ready.
Chairman and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application, and you'll also hear from the applicants. As you've heard, the proposal before you is the extension of time for a further 2 years to ensure the continuity of service, and for the proposed condition number 2 to have the trigger point for submission of details amended to account for this 2-year extension of time and allowing for the existing containers to be repurposed within the build, should the applicant choose to implement the most recent scheme, which will include the sustainable reuse of the shipping containers already on site. The applicant has advised that they're committed to building out one of the approved schemes, and to keep their options open, they've already made a material commencement of the 2022 planning consent in early December 25. The applicant is in the process of costing out both the schemes, as well as confirming lead times on materials to enable them to come to an informed decision on which scheme to build out. The applicant also still has to finalise lease terms with BCP Council, including the reinvestment of insurance monies by BCP to enable the rebuild, as well as finalising many elements of the rebuild to enable the conditions to be submitted and discharged. Whilst every endeavour shall be taken to ensure the development is completed by spring 27, there are always the unknown elements, which is as stated above as well, which have in the past proven to create delays in the project already. The 2-year extension has been proposed as a buffer to any unforeseen circumstances which may further delay the cafe building being rebuilt. In answer to Claire Bath's question on the toilets, I believe that was a request that we didn't put that into a requirement of the licence review. And I'll now hand you over to the applicants.
I think one thing that everyone in this room right now can agree on is the fact that we want the beach house rebuilt as soon as possible, and that level of agreement is rare these days. So let me start by reiterating that we are committed to ensuring that the beach house is rebuilt as soon as humanly possible, and that this application makes no difference to the speed of that delivery. We have been driving this rebuild from the start and constantly pushing to speed up the process, but unfortunately it has always been out of our hands. This application is to ensure that we can continue to offer service and facility for the needs of the area until this rebuild is finally complete. Delays have come at this project from every angle, from the fact that Christchurch Council underinsured the building originally, then the merger of Christchurch Council into BCP delayed project planning, then COVID happened. We all know how much that helped everything. carried on with council finances, a trust budget, inflation, a ship stuck in the Panama Canal, and just about everything else that could be thrown at us. So that's the reason for allowing the extra time built into this, rather than giving us too tight a deadline when things just keep coming. We are keenly aware of the unique conditions of the site. Building work can only reasonably happen in the off-season, and we are at the mercy of the weather during those times. So again, we just need to have that built-in option. So it's for this reason we're requesting a 2-year extension, not because we don't want to rebuild at the earliest possible convenience, but because inconveniences are common. We fully plan to commence building work later this year. Once we've reached September and the summer season is over, we're hoping to be in a position to start the demolition and removal of the temporary site, and that the new build will be in place for spring next year. Shortening the time limit on this application won't speed up the building work. It will only increase the risk of losing any temporary facilities in the meantime. We appreciate the request for extra facilities that have come as part of the temporary offer. Unfortunately, they are not feasible. We have investigated installing toilets into the temporary setup. It doesn't work out at this stage. These are all issues that are all addressed by the new build. So the hope is that we just get to that point as soon as possible and we resolve everything. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And we also have Ward Councillor Bernadette Nanovo.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. Actually, still morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Bernadette Nanovo, and I represent East Southbourne and Chuckton Ward, where this cafe is based. As we heard just now, recent planning permission was granted for a new structure on this site. And I know I speak for our residents when I say we are all looking forward to having this new cafe. However, we all know how long it takes to get quotes and schedule works, and I'm not surprised that the applicants don't have an end date for the build project. It therefore makes sense for the current structure to continue until this new building can be built. The biggest issue seems to be around toilets, and I know the applicant has explored temporary solutions. I understand why the beach hut owners and some other beach users may be annoyed at the bad behaviour of some residents on this site, but unfortunately, we cannot stop all bad behaviour. Even if there were toilets on site, we would probably find that some people would still not queue. There will always be this element of antisocial behaviour, but that does not mean that we deny residents and visitors a place to rest and have food and drinks as they go out and about and enjoy this beautiful area. We therefore need this business to stay in place until the new cafe is up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Miss James, was there anything from what the speakers have said you wanted to come back on about the toilet in particular? Is there a possible for a condition about cleaning? Sorry, microphone.
I was just thinking about the potential to include some kind of cleaning regime for the existing public loos, Block 3. I guess it's a little bit similar to the litter picking condition in a way, but it is outside of the red line. It does get a bit complicated in that way. So I think it needs a bit more thought.
Okay, thank you for that. So open up to members for questions then, please. Councillor Gillett.
Just so I've got this right. The so it's a 5-year permission, but actually it will expire in December 27 because they've had them there for 3 years already. Is that right?
Total of 5 years. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So,
it's dated for the 31st of December 2027.
So actually it's 2 years
From now, yeah. Well,
and is the new thing going to be built in 2 years? Well, we don't know, do we?
that's been part of the discussion, but yeah.
Any other questions? No. So we're Councillor Canavan?
Yeah, I just want to be clear whether we want to or not, putting that to one side, can we condition it about the toilets? That's what I'm, irrespective of what the applicant has said, I would like to see a condition about these toilets, because I just don't believe the fact that licensing haven't included it is, in my view, irrelevant. We can, in my head, we ought to be able to condition it, and I don't believe the applicant saying it's not viable is acceptable. I think we ought to be able to require at least some help and support in providing that, in terms of our, in our willingness to apply and accept this application, because it's something which I'm not comfortable with.
James?
Do you mean supplying loos on site, or do you mean contributing to the cleaning of the existing toilet block 3?
Both.
Because the application is a Section 73 application, it would be, I don't think it's in our gift to be able to include, require further development. Because that would potentially change the description of the development. I think that goes beyond our powers. We could potentially include a condition to contribute to the cleaning of the existing toilet block 3. If that is something the applicant would be willing to do. It is a little bit beyond the remit of the application.
Because I think basically you're saying, because it is the application we've had last year, this is just tweaking a couple of conditions. Is that what you're?
This is an application from 3 years ago, and we are just tweaking conditions. We're not changing the parent main application. The application is just to change the length, the timing of the condition, the period of time it's valid for, and condition 2 around the removal. So the changes have to directly relate to what is already permitted.
Yeah, I understand all of that. My point is, this application seeks to give them more time to do the work they want to do. So in the interim period, why can't they provide some support for the existing toilets?
If the committee is happy, the applicant to say a few words, if that's okay. Are we in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Firstly, to address the idea of being able to put toilets on the site, Claire Bath did indicate that the existing drainage is there. Unfortunately, that drainage does have shipping containers over the top of it. Being able to access that drainage is a very difficult, expensive building project. So putting them on site connected to the mains drainage is not possible at this stage in the game. Regarding being able to offer assistance in help with cleaning the existing public toilets, that is something that we would negotiate with the Seafronts team, who have the operational facility there. What I would suggest is that the Hutty Association are suggesting that it is when we have events on that we are busier and there are more pressures on those toilets. For the next year, as part of our licensing, we have already established that we are vastly reducing the events that we are doing, but we would consider putting cleaning facilities in place if we have an event on. But the suggestion of doing it 3 hourly through the summer is suggesting that we clean all the public toilets more often than the council clean the public toilets, which I don't think is a fair expression. But if we are putting on an event where we are putting a physical increase on that use, we are happy to discuss with the seafront officers a suitable method of assisting with that, if that helps.
Mr. Slater, can you briefly say why licensing didn't impose your requirement for
They
toilets?
didn't see it as part of an issue. There was no evidence presented at the licensing committee of an issue, aside from people saying that there's an issue, much alongside the same as the litter picking. When there was an opportunity to present evidence, photographic, any sort of evidence, no evidence came forward. So it was difficult to argue.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for that. That's useful. Okay, was there any other point you want to come back on, Councillor Canavan? maybe in the debate. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Salmon.
I might just be repeating Patrick's point, to be honest. I don't get why this can't be covered under a waste management plan and just go, there should be a waste management plan, and that covers the toilets and whatnot as well, human waste as well as normal waste. Isn't that a fairly standard condition?
Well, I think as Ms James said, it is about the bigger application didn't require that. This is just a tweak. Mr Gould.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think the difficult when this first came up 10 minutes ago or so, I thought there might be some merit in it. But thinking on it, I think the difficulty that we've got here is that the toilets are not in the control of the applicant; they're owned by the council, and so we would be requiring the applicant to take control. And I don't think we've necessarily got the right people in the room today to say that the council, as the operator of the toilets, might have certain ways that things need to be done, certain products that need to be used, certain safety standards. And I don't think we have that. I think that would have to be a conversation that the applicant would need to have with Seafront Services, because the toilets aren't in his control. So I think, I don't want to prejudge, but I think the best you could probably do is, if members get to the point where there's a move on the table to support the officer's recommendation, i.e. to grant, you might want to consider adding an informative note that asks the applicant to make contact with Seafront Services and discuss that point.
That's useful. Thank you. Right. So if we go into debate now, Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you very much. I heard Claire Bath's comments about the toilets, and yeah, like a lot of people thought that's a great idea, but exactly as Mr. Gould's just pointed out, there's real issues with getting somebody to clean our toilets. It's not within the red line. This is an extension for time of an existing application, so we cannot request betterment as part of this, which I think the officer was sort of getting to the point of saying. So it is literally, as the applicant has said, to extend it so that they're de-risking the project, and I do wholeheartedly believe that they want to get on. They spent a lot of money on the other application that was decided in October. To not build it would be a waste of time. Bearing in mind there's been a huge, and this was once a Christchurch borough facility, and as mentioned, the whole financing thing, there's a lot of work to do here. So I'd also make mention that as a council and Seafront Services, we've just upping the council charge for the owners of the beach huts, and although you can't directly correlate that expenditure onto better cleaning services, I think that the point of contact should be exactly as Mr. Gould said, that if there is a complaint about the toilets, perhaps the applicant could put a sign up saying this is the BCP report it site, and ask individuals to say the toilets are disgusting, can we get them cleaned? Being a regular user of the spit, and having stayed in beach huts where the beach hut owners get a key to their own toilets as well, and their own showers, that I see it more of an issue for the public than beach hut owners. And generally speaking, bearing in mind the age of the toilets, I think they're generally kept in a fairly decent condition. But I think that the best we could insist the applicant does is that they post up the number of our report it site to Seafront Services, and I would suggest that's the only thing that they may wish to do. I don't suggest we condition it, but I'm happy to propose that we grant in line with the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Just before we go to Councillor Gillett, again, for equality, the objector, Mrs. Bath, has indicated, so is the committee happy that we hear what she has to say. So Claire, if you want to speak now, please.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me speak again. We wondered whether there might be an opportunity for them to contribute financially to the cleaning rather than actually saying that they physically have to do the cleaning, whether that might be an option for members to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that's all within the discussion potentially with Seafront Services. So Councillor Gillett.
First of all, I say I absolutely agree with Patrick that it's a terrible planning thing to say that you're not going to put something in place because you can't. But that's so it'd be the same as saying, well, we're not going to have a sustainable travel because there's no because it's not possible on the site, and then we have to grant it anyway. But I think, although I completely agree with that, in the respect of what's actually in the report here, because that's not how the report is being argued, that's how the applicant argued. In respect of the report, we've got something which is temporary. It's an amendment to a previous application. It's not the reasons that are being put in the that are being put into the report. And I think that we have to almost look at it from the perspective of the report and looking at it from the perspective of the fact that we are looking at a minor amendment to something which has already been previously conditioned, and they were the conditions that were previously set up. And otherwise, I think we're moving beyond the scope of this planning application.
Okay, so we got the table proposal. Councillor Federman, are you seconding?
Well, I'm happy to second, but I'd also like to speak. But I'm basically supporting what Councillor Gillett said. We gave permission for these temporary containers whenever, can't remember exactly when it was. We didn't at the time see fit to put any sort of condition about the toilets. I don't see we can start, or that we can start adding to the conditions which we didn't put in originally, about anything for that matter, but particularly things that are obviously going to cost the applicant money, that are not part of the facility he is providing. That's my point. I can't see any reason not to support this or to make any problems for it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Canavan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I respect the points I've just been made, but here we have a situation where this paper asks us to give the applicant more time to keep these shipping containers on site. And what we've established today is that they're blocking the main drains. And yet this application gives them the option of retaining them. Now, if these shipping containers are on the top of drains, so that they can't, or it's difficult to access them, why would we want to do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I can't understand why we wouldn't, if we're giving them, as this paper suggests, the option of retaining them, why we can't condition that. That in my head, I can't fathom that at all. So I'm still very uncomfortable with this.
Okay, I'll just ask Miss James, the officer, to come in on that point, please.
So this is a continuation of the temporary permission which is previously agreed. The replacement permanent structures, which are hopefully to start in September, contain 3 toilets, 2 customer toilets and 1 staff toilet. So the issue will be resolved, and it would be one, it's outside of the remit of this application, but 2, the amount of work that would be required to do that between now and then for a short period of time, in my mind, would be a little bit far-reaching in terms of costs and things like that.
Sorry, Chair, but we haven't addressed the issue of these shipping containers, have we? This paper asks us to agree the option of retaining them.
Not in the current format. They're approved to be reused in the permanent permission that was agreed in October, and they would be reconfigured on site into the approved layout. The toilets would have to be installed as that permission is approved, not in the current layout that they are now. They would just be recycled and reused.
Councillor Rice.
Just a thought on the location and the toilets and the sewage ending up in the sea. Just a suggestion for the use of compost toilets in this location. I appreciate that the planning application has already gone through, but maybe that is something that could be explored.
Okay, Councillor Salmon.
So it sounds like even if there is an issue, there are no levers we could pull. And to be fair to our colleagues in licensing, an issue wasn't identified then that felt like it needed to be addressed. I think I agree with, yeah, we should. I'm happy to support the proposal.
Okay, so if there's no further points, so as suggested by Mr. Gould, the proposer, are you happy to have an informative about the applicant speak to Seafront Services?
If that is what you suggest the informative is, to speak to them, I think they probably speak to them already. I'm assuming they're already speaking to Seafront Services, and the only informative I'd say is that perhaps we suggest that the applicant may wish to put a sign up saying the toilets are located here, they're under the control of BCP Council, here is the contact number if you find them wanting. Bearing in mind that we are charging, what is it, 50% double now for the council tax on the beach hut, so I think that's fairly reasonable.
Okay, Ms. Hullock.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check the wording that Mr. Gould used was to include an informative note for the applicant to contact Seafront Services to discuss potential assistance with cleaning the public toilet block. And we could add an appropriate signage, install appropriate signage.
I wouldn't suggest that we suggest. I don't suggest that we suggest they speak to assist in the cleaning of the toilets. No, absolutely not. It's their council toilets, which we're all paying for our council tax. We have cleaners, they're ours. We need to clean our toilets for our public, for our visitors. I think there's no harm whatsoever in suggesting that the applicant, when somebody goes, those toilets are disgusting, that they say, they're the council's, here's the number, here's how you contact them.
Okay, and Councillor Pedwin, the seconder, you're happy?
Yes. I mean, I've noted what the applicant has said about working with the Seafront Services and open to working for improved toilet cleaning when there's major events, not routinely. And if that goes ahead, I'm very happy. And I don't think we really need to sort of include any formal wording to that effect.
Okay, thank you for
necessarily.
that. So if there's no further debate, we go to the vote. So if you're happy to approve as set out, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you're against it, show now.
No.
And abstentions. Okay, thank you. So that application is approved as set out. Thank you. And we go to 6C, which is also at the Beach House Cafe. Ms. James.
The next application, again at the Beach House. This is a new application for the change of use from open space to Class EB in connection with the Beach House Cafe and the siting of 8 picnic benches. Just again, it's the same location that we've just discussed. And this time the site and location plan is outlined in red here. Returning to the aerial view, just to remind, we're not discussing the main application again for the actual cafe, it's just the siting of the picnic benches. The picnic benches were first located here in a response to the pandemic in around 2020. The Act itself still exists, but the pandemic specific provisions have been concluded. addendum updates for this application, just a correction for paragraph 39. It should read as a bullet point, just continuing the list of objections, and to clarify, there is no objection from the Environment Agency. And on paragraph 82, to replace the name Environment Agency with Natural England, and also to alter the timing of condition 4, just to within 2 months for the litter prevention and control plan, that should be submitted and be implemented by the 1st of June 2026, or within 2 months of the discharge of that condition, whichever comes first. Again, this will not alter the assessment or the enforcement powers of that condition. Just looking at site photos of where the benches are located. They are located to the west of the cafe, just along the shoreline. And the photo on the right just shows some other picnic benches that are in and around the area towards the north of the site. And these images also show other picnic benches which are to the south of the site, located to the front of the beach huts. The Beach House Cafe is situated just around 6 to 7 metres to the east of the existing position of the picnic benches, and it has established lawful use as a cafe with ancillary takeaway use. The benches also support the function of the area for recreation by providing a place for visitors to the area to sit. The main issues are acceptable as shown in the report. The benches themselves cannot be considered as development as they are not a permanent structure. So the application's more about the change of use of the site area. The proposal maintains the openness of the green belt. It retains the public open space function of the area, and the benches support the recreational use of the area. There's no harm to the designated SSSI or the SNCI, and there are no objections from Natural England. The materials and visual impact are appropriate to the area, and the benches themselves enhance accessibility for for visitors. The amenity of the nearby beach huts is further consideration, and appropriate conditions are required to control and keep this area protected in the future. The recommended conditions are number 3, the picnic benches are to be maintained. They're timber, and so they must be maintained in terms of appearance, kept structurally sound, and repaired or replaced when required by the operator of the adjacent cafe. I haven't named the cafe because that could change in the future. Again, the litter prevention and control plan, and this is for the management of any litter or waste that arises from the cafe and the takeaway use. This condition is slightly different to the previously talked about conditions and requires at least 2 additional covered bins in this site area, so in addition to the other 2 bins, a schedule of litter picking and table cleaning, the return of this litter to the commercial waste storage on the main site, and the bins emptying as needed when full. Condition 5 is no amplified music. At no time should any entertainment or amplified music take place from this site. And the final condition, which controls the use. The use of the benches should be limited to the takeaway use and the public access use retained at all times. There could be no table service and open to the public at all times. No signage or demarcation or cordoning off of the site, and the PD rights are removed for any sort of additional commercial development. With these conditions, it's been assessed that the siting of the 8 picnic benches in association with the Beach House Cafe is acceptable in terms of amenity. again, in summary, the proposals are acceptable in terms of impact to the Greenbelt. There's no impact to openness. The use of the site for the general public and takeaway customers can be considered a recreational use, which is appropriate for this part of the Greenbelt. The proposals will not cause unacceptable impacts to the nature designations or the SSSI, and that's confirmed by Natural England. The materials and appearance are acceptable in this seafront location. The impact on amenity is considered acceptable with the inclusion of the conditions. Biodiversity, net gain issues are acceptable. And the picnic benches will continue to support the visitor and tourism function of the area, along with the local beach hut owners. And in conclusion, the use of the site for takeaway customer seating and public seating on balance will not be harmful, as a use is appropriate to this part of the Sandspit as an outdoor recreation location. The use already exists and will be further controlled by conditions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. James, for the presentation. So we'll go to speakers now, please.
Thank you. The first speaker is Darren Pidwell of Mudderford Sandbank Beach Hut Association. Whenever you're ready, Darren.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think the key issue to this application is addressed at point 68 of your officer's report. So perhaps I could ask you to refer to that paragraph. Whilst you're locating it, can I just come back very quickly on what you've just seen and your officer's visual images of the benches which are outside the beach huts? I just ask you to sort of bear in mind that those benches are actually part of our license agreement. And as you know well, we pay a significant amount of money for that particular license. So I don't think that really has any relevance to what's being requested today. So in terms of the paragraph 68, I think this comments on the commercial creep and intensification challenge, but also by my reading seems to imply that as the benches have been in situ for 5 years, this almost by default is acceptable. Come back to that in a moment. In terms of the commercial creep, I think the statement is perhaps slightly contradictory and very much subjective. So if you read it, my question is, does it increase the commercial use or not? Is that increased use harmful or not? And additionally, what evidence has your officer based their opinion on? In terms of the 5-year comment, as has already been articulated, so the benches were only allowed during the loosening of the restrictions due to COVID. That's now fallen away. So I think the fact that they've been there for 5 years is not particularly relevant. I'd also like to point out for reference that external benches were originally part of the site footprint many years ago. And we have to remember that the tenant some years ago elected to enclose that area to create additional internal covers. So I think our assertion is that there has been some intensification of commercial use on the site since those benches have been there. But I think more importantly, this is a classic case of commercial creep on the sandbank. But however, I think if the committee are minded to approve the benches, we are very pleased to see that the public access is retained to ensure that the area does remain open space and that there are the appropriate litter and noise management conditions that have been recommended. So we would obviously request that if you are minded to approve, then that's done so with the adoption of all of your officers' recommended conditions. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that.
And for the applicant, we have Claire Spiller, the agent, and Richard Slater again.
Chairman and committee members, thank you again for taking the opportunity to speak in support of this application. And you're also again here from the applicants. As you've heard, the proposal is to retain the beach for public use, but includes a number of picnic benches, 8 for the general public and cafe patrons alike to sit at. By way of background, these benches have been in situ since the relaxing of restrictions in response to COVID. It's important to note that although the business is supplying these benches, they will remain available for the general public to sit at without having purchased food or drink from the Beach House Cafe. The applicant has a fixed signage to each table to say that they are available for public use, and the applicant agrees to the proposed conditions, including there being no table service or severing off of this area to be used only in connection with the Beach House Cafe business to ensure that this truly does remain a public facility. The application site remains as a public beach for the use and enjoyment of the general public. Despite the popularity of the area with visitors, there are few seating facilities, and this often impinges on the older and less mobile visitors who like to visit. It is a considerable walk from the car park, and the seating allows those with restricted mobility and stamina to recharge before their return journey to their vehicle. And you'll see this echoed by many of the comments of support received from the public. The officers rightly agree that the picnic benches are not development, as they're not fixed to the ground in any way and therefore not classed as permanent structures. Therefore, they don't require permission in their own right. As you've seen from the slides, the area is characterised by a proliferation of picnic benches, which are common outside most of the beach huts, with many hut owners positioning benches outside their demise and leaving them in situ all year round. The use of the beach in connection with the cafe would not result in the loss of public open space, and the land would still be used by the general public, therefore conforming to your policy CS31 recreation, play and sports, and there would be no adverse effect on the green belt. I'll now hand you over to the applicant.
So as you've been told today, in 2020, COVID measures allowed us to put the benches out the front of the beach house at a time when we were social distancing and enjoying our 1 hour of activity outside. It was fully supported and arranged with council officers at the time. This was not something we did off our own accord, and they've remained offering a public facility ever since. This is not an application for any development or for anything permanent to be put in place or for access to be restricted in any way. It is simply an application to allow the status quo to continue and for people to sit on a bench that we provide. Many of the beach huts at Hengersbury Head have benches outside their huts year round, despite not having any planning approvals for these. And contrary to what Darren did say, they don't have permission within their hut licence to keep them there year round. They are meant to remove them each winter, but they don't. I have also heard over the years many hut owners complain in the past of the public sitting on their benches. So I'm surprised that the association has asked for the removal of a public facility that mitigates this. Access to Hengersbury Head is not easy. You don't end up there by misadventure. It has to be somewhere you want to visit, as so many people do, for its special character, its scenery and the memories evoked. You have read comments of support, hopefully 600 I believe it was, from many elderly and physically impaired people who love to enjoy this idyllic location and have for generations, but who have to weigh up the barriers of a lengthy walk over uneven terrain and who aren't fortunate to have a hut to rest in at the end of their journey, yet they still want to revisit the area they love. Providing respite at the end of this with no expectations is the least we can do. These benches are in the public domain. Anyone can sit there at any time, and we do not police them for customers only. The council is cash-strapped and has demands to spend on other facilities, including toilets and showers for hutties. It is unable to provide everything. There have been no reported incidents regarding these benches. We've had no reports of any actual issue of increased litter from council officers. We actively litter pick the area already multiple times throughout the day. The litter plan that is a proposed condition is something we already do and have been doing for years. The people that use these benches are also as capable as anyone of using the bin facilities provided, including extra facilities that we have recently increased at our own cost. The objectors have provided no actual evidence to the contrary. So in summary, there's clearly a need for this seating as expressed by the public. There is no evidence of any harm caused to beach hut residents other than the fact they don't like it. There is no alternative option for this need that the council can offer. So let us continue to facilitate the status quo. Let us give all the people that enjoy Hengersbury Head somewhere to sit for a while. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry, you carry on.
Anything else before I disappear again?
Hopefully not, no. But I would just give Mr. Pidwell the opportunity to come back And Mr. Pidwell, if you can keep it to factual, obviously, no doubt you're coming back about your terms of your licence, but yeah, if you can keep it to that specific, thank you.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to come back. I think Mr. Slater has been slightly disingenuous. He is factually incorrect. I'm sure if the officers and the committee members wish to check, our licence very much does allow us to have a bench, which is for our own personal use. That bench is allowed to be placed on the beach, and during the winter months, those benches are then removed and put on our respective decks. So I think if anyone walks down the beach today, you will see that the very vast majority of those benches are in their correct position. Let's not forget that we, as I said, pay for this facility through our significant licence fees, and I'm sure that the beach house won't be contributing to BCP coffers by having these additional benches.
Okay, Mr. Pidwell.
That would be my only comment. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And the last speaker, please.
Is Councillor Bernadette Novo.
Thank you, Councillor Bernadette Novo for East Southbourne and Tuckton again. I don't have an awful lot to say on good, I see someone smiling at me, on this, except that when I go down to Muddyford Spit, after a long walk, I usually sit on one of these benches and have a coffee or a cold drink. Often I bring my own sandwich. And I know from others that they do the same. It is an ideal place to sit and enjoy the views, and particularly for those who arrive there with a little picnic and just want somewhere to sit for a short while. In fact, people have said to me that they would like more picnic benches rather than less. So again, I'm confident that common sense will prevail and that the applicant will get to keep these benches for all of us to enjoy.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. James, was there anything you wanted to come back on? I don't think there's anything. No. Okay, so we're open up to questions. Councillor Pedderin.
I'm puzzled. If these benches have been there for 5 years, why are we now being asked to give permission for them? I don't understand.
It's in response to enforcement complaints. So an application was requested to be submitted to finalise that. Oh, sorry, it was in response to planning enforcement investigations. There was complaints received, and that was the recommended action from the enforcement to submit a planning application.
Thank you. Councillor Tarling? No. Oh, you didn't? Right. No other questions? No. Okay, so we're going to a debate then. Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm more than happy to propose as set out, especially in the knowledge that the public notices are maintained on those benches. Other than that, yeah, quite happy.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Canavan?
I think, do you want to go first?
I was just happy to second.
We record a second by Councillor Rice, and
I'm probably going to be a lone voice once again, but I just want to reflect that this is an application to change the use of a public open space. So we recognise this as a public open space, yet this application is requesting us to change it. So that for me presents an immediate problem, because if they weren't requesting it, then it remains a public open space. And the fact that they're having to apply means that we're changing the nature of that public open space. That's the logic of this to me. So my other concern about this is that there are quite clear objections to it, all of which appear to have been supported by the Environment Agency. From what I can read in this report, the Environment Agency share the objectors' concerns, is what it says at paragraph 39, because it sets out the reasons that are at the bullet points in section 39, and I see no mitigation of any of that in this report. So I'm really once again struggling that we are allowing what has been referred to earlier as commercial creep onto public open space, which I fundamentally find objectionable.
Okay, thank you. So just confirm that the Environment Agency or Natural England did have something, but objection, but they withdrew or.
So paragraph 39 was in the addendum. That was just a formatting error. It should have just been a bullet point as one of the objection comments. It's not a comment from Natural England or the Environment Agency. And that was in the addendum. There is no objection. It's a typo, and it was covered in the addendum. That paragraph 39, it should be a bullet point.
It's one heck of an addendum, isn't it? To fundamentally change.
If you read the lines above and below, you can see it's a list of objection points from the public, and that is the section of the report that it was in. Yeah.
And again, from my point of view, and as we've heard from. Sorry, from my point of view, and we heard from all the councillor and obviously the applicant, and I've seen it myself, it is still open space because anyone can use it. So potentially you could have a picnic on the beach, but for elderly who can't get onto the sand, this gives them another option. So again, I'm supportive of it. So are there any other? Councillor Tarling?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really offended by some of the comments made about older people. I'm only 55 and I enjoy sitting down when I've walked all the whole length of Hengistbury Head, and I'm more than happy to join Councillor Novo with her bottle of whatever she chooses in a brown paper bag sitting on the bench. It's absolutely fine as long as we're both being sociable and not anti-sociable. My experience, I've walked on there many times. I've had a hot chocolate and a takeaway. And the one point that may have been made by the applicant is that if when the benches weren't there, you'd be inclined to walk away with your disposable cup and go sit, maybe not on another bench, a privately owned bench, but on the wall, seawall or so and so, potentially then spreading the potential for litter. By having the 8 benches there, we're actually encouraging people to get their takeaway, sit down, enjoy the view of my house on the other side of the harbour, and I think for me it's a no-brainer. I don't get what some of the objections are by a councillor here about the open space. Perhaps he's never been there, but it is a very open space.
I've been there, Chair. I object to that. I've been there several times. Withdraw that, Councillor Tarling.
I won't withdraw anything, councillor. It's a great experience. It gets very full in the summer. Offering 8 benches offers plenty of seating. Thank you, and I will support the application.
Councillor Pedden.
Yeah, and not only did I fully support this, I want to thank the operator for, at his own expense and his own effort, or his staff's effort, for providing a facility for the general public with no strings attached, which I think is brilliant. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if there's any other speakers, we've got a proposal by Councillor Flagg, seconded by Councillor Rice, to approve as set out. So we'll go to a vote. If you're happy to approve, vote now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you're against,
1.
okay, that is approved as set out. So thank you for the report. That moves us to the last application of 6E, which is 65 Richmond Wood Road. Mr. Sanders.
Good afternoon. This proposal is for a change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a sui generis 8-person HMO at 65A Richmond Wood Road, for which we recommend approval. The key issues of this proposal are the impacts on the character and appearance of the area, the impacts on neighbouring residential amenity, the impacts on future occupants, the impacts on parking provision, highways and waste, and the impacts on B&G, the Dorset Heathlands and New Forest. The dwelling house is a semi-detached property. The image on the left shows the location of the previously approved rear extension as well as location for the bike store. The location is in Queen's Park, with the park itself visible in the picture on the right to the top right of the image. Dwellings are on Richmond Wood Road, and the general immediate area are typical detached or semi-detached properties. On the site photos, you can see the front elevation on the left and the rear on the right, and the dwelling is a typical semi-detached property for the area. Here are the existing elevations. Note the existing layout, which includes 3 bedrooms. And here are the proposed elevations. Note the conversion of the roof space to 2 bedrooms via a dormer, which would be implemented under permitted development, and then the inclusion of 3 bedrooms on the first floor and 3 more bedrooms on the ground floor. Here is the proposed cycle store. So we address the key issues, the first one being the character and appearance of the area. The dormer would be built under permitted development, and this would be completed prior to the change of use from a C3 dwelling house to a sui generis HMO. This would be conditioned to ensure completion prior to the change of use, and this was the method used for previous dwellings in the BCP area 397 and 399 Ashley Road in Poole. The intensification of the use of the existing dwelling would not harm the character and appearance of the area, and therefore the proposal is compliant with CS41 of the core strategy. Regarding neighbouring residential amenity, the dormers, as said before, would be completed under permitted development rules, and therefore the impact on amenity cannot be considered. However, if they were considered, it is unlikely they'd have a detrimental impact on neighbouring amenity. The increase in occupancy is acceptable. There are larger dwellings along the road with a higher occupancy rate, and many of the additional comings and goings, but within the context of the road and surrounding dwellings, these additional comings and goings would not be harmful. And the proposal is compliant with policy CS24 of the core strategy. 4.54% of the properties within the catchment area are C4 or sui generis HMOs, which is below the 10% required by the policy. And therefore, in terms of neighbouring amenity, the proposal is compliant with the 2 policies, CS24 and CS41. In terms of future occupants, there is the provision of sufficient garden and amenity space, as well as a bike store to the rear. The proposal includes an ensuite bathroom, toilet and shower for every bedroom and an additional downstairs WC. This is compliant with policy 6.17 of the district-wide local plan. The internal spaces, including bedrooms and communal areas, are compliant with the nationally described space standards. And therefore, the proposal is compliant with the 2 policies CS24 and 41, as well as policy 6.17 of the district-wide local plan and the nationally described space standards. In terms of highways and parking provision, as well as waste, the application provides no additional parking and includes the provision of a cycle store to the rear. The dwelling house is in parking zone D. Sui generis HMOs are required to have 1 parking space, regardless of parking zone, according to the parking standards SPD. The current use for a C3 dwelling house usually requires 2 parking spaces. However, there is currently no parking available at the property. The highways officer raised no objection, despite the lack of additional parking provided, but subject to the inclusion of a condition for cycle facilities to be built prior to occupation. As the highways officer is the advisory authority, this conclusion is agreed upon and the proposal will not cause harm to parking provision or the highway. Therefore, the impacts on the highway are deemed acceptable and the scheme is compliant with policy CS41 of the core strategy and 6.17 of the district-wide local plan. The waste officer also raised no objections to the proposal and therefore there is no harm to or impacts on waste collection. In terms of B&G, Dorset Heathlands and the New Forest Sams, the proposal does not cause harm to B&G as it's subject to exemption and a contribution towards the Heathland mitigation and New Forest Sams will be secured. And therefore, in summary, Planning approval is recommended, subject to the completion of the legal agreement for the contributions towards the Dorset Heathlands and New Forest House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We'll go to speakers now, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have two local residents. First, Mr. Alan Jackson, who's here in person, and secondly, Mr. David Fazakli, who is joining us on Teams. Thank you both for your patience.
Well, thank you everybody for allowing me the opportunity to express my views about this planning application. I actually live in Richmond Park Avenue, which is the adjacent road, and I'm therefore not directly affected by this application, but I am because of the way that I feel the expression I'm going to say. I'm sorry, I've got off track. It does, however, raise some issues for me, which I would like to express. There are already several HMOs in the area that the council is aware of, and there are additional properties that we suspect are also effectively HMOs but are unlicensed and therefore unknown to you. Granting this application will contribute further to the change of the general ambience of the area, and refusing it will set a precedent to refuse further application and therefore preserve the current environment. There have been 50 objections, which I imagine is quite a large number for a single dwelling. 44 of those come from Richmond Wood Road. That's an awful lot of people relying on having their voices heard, and it's essential that these voices are fully considered. The report for this meeting does mention these 50 objections, but seemingly more in passing and presented as a rather in a vague way. All comments are summarised in a single general table. There are no figures to give any sense of priority to the order, and it's at the whim of the author. Consequently, I don't think the strength of feeling in these objections has been fully conveyed to you. The people are relying on you to fully consider their concerns as you make this decision today. This is all part of the democratic planning process, which must be seen to be operating fairly. It is an unfortunate but known abuse of the planning system where a property owner can be granted very substantial planning developments on the basis that it remains a domestic house. Once these modifications are permitted, the owner can then apply for a change to HMO, as is the case here. I suspect that if the proposed works were submitted honestly as a single application for an HMO, it may have been rejected on the grounds of being an overdevelopment. It would certainly have been seen and evaluated for what it really is, and I find that rather unsatisfactory. I would also challenge some of the statements in the committee report that have been outlined to you, some of which are favoured very much in favour of granting this permission. To me, it is clear that provision for 8 residents is an overdevelopment of what is in reality a 3-bedroom semi-detached house. The report suggests that 3 to 6 people, which I presumably a family, but it could be others, could reasonably be expected to live in it when it is a domestic house. And the report suggests it's not an unreasonable intensification to increase it to 8. I disagree with that. That conclusion completely ignores the obvious social differences between a couple and their family and 8 unrelated random adults living together. It's not comparable, and it's wrong not to acknowledge that. The parking standards, as already mentioned, requires 1 parking space per HMO. The Highways Officer, however, has dismissed this. Residents have objected strongly because of their concerns for parking. This is a clearly specified requirement, and it's utterly incorrect to waive it for no reason. It's a condition, and it should be enforced. So in conclusion, I would encourage you to refuse planning permission on the grounds of the substantial number of objections that people have given who laudably want to see their local environment retained and which we all enjoy. There are many other reasons, and David will now give his speech and outline all the other features, and I fully support what he's about to say. Thank you for my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
And Mr. Fazakli, you've got around 1.5 minutes left, I'm afraid.
All right, I'll go as quick as I can. Thank you, Aaron, as well. As a resident of Richmond Wood Road, I bought this house with my family to raise my small children, and we're seeing the road change frequently. I've got 4 reasons, and I'll be as quick as I can. Parking and highway safety. Richmond Wood Road already suffers from severe parking congestion. This is not hypothetical. Over the last year, 4 penalty charge notices have been issued for vehicles blocking my driveway. This demonstrates the street is already at capacity. Introducing any form of HMO, particularly one accommodating up to 8 occupants, will inevitably increase car ownership and vehicle movements. As Alan said, this application does not provide sufficient off-street parking and therefore presents a clear and foreseeable risk to highway safety. As we spoke earlier about Bournemouth Football Club, this road is used frequently for football fans, which is going to intensify over the next few years. Richmond Wood Road is a stable, low-density, family-oriented residential street. Converting a single-family home in any form of HMO, regardless of size, would fundamentally and permanently alter the character of the area. HMOs bring higher turnover of residents, increased noise and greater pressure on already stretched local infrastructures. This proposal is completely incompatible. As Alan said, this is clearly overdevelopment. The change from a C3 dwelling to an 8-person HMO represents significant intensification of use of this property, and surrounding infrastructure cannot reasonably support this. Finally, there has been no assessment of cumulative impact. Approving this application would clearly contrary to paragraph 111 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which is clear that development should be refused where it results in an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Subject to what was said earlier, this does conflict with policies CS21 and CS41 of the Bournemouth Local Plan, which exists specifically to protect residential amenity and neighbourhood character. The harm is foreseeable, policy conflicting and irreversible, and is nothing to do with the street or Bournemouth and Bournemouth Council. This is purely about money, and this is ruining a street full of families. So I hope that people understand why people are so angry in the area of this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
There is nobody here on behalf of the applicant, so we'll move on to ward councillors. We have Councillor Sharon Carr-Brown and then Councillor Alistair Keddy.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, this application has garnered 50 objections from nearby residents and no support at all. That's not because the people who live in this road don't want other people to have homes, they do, but because this scheme represents a significant overdevelopment of the site and the loss of one of the most precious commodities in BCP, a 3-bedroomed house. I called this in because it was unconscionable that this could be considered without properly reflecting that level of opposition. We're being asked to allow the semi-detached family home to become an 8-bed HMO. This isn't a particularly big house and plot to start with, and significant physical remodelling will be needed to accommodate all the proposed rooms. This is the first problem with the application. Paragraph 1 of the officer's report makes it clear that the changes to the house are only being made in order to then change it to an HMO, but we're not allowed to consider these things together today. I would say that defies common sense. The property will be converted using permitted development rights, but that would not be allowed if it were already an HMO. But it is only being done in order to turn it into an HMO. They are symbiotic in everything but planning legislation. To me, it defies logic to consider one without the other. I'm not a planning expert, but this seems legally incoherent to me. The planning history of the rear extension shows that this is only being allowed because neighbours didn't fully appreciate the intricacies of planning law and failed to object a second time to prior approval being needed. The officer originally refused prior approval based in part on neighbour amenity. Please ask the officer about the planning history because nothing has changed about the development, so the lack of neighbour amenity still applies. The effect on the immediate neighbours will be significant. We must also consider the amenity of future residents. The plans show that 3 of the 8 bedrooms, 4, 7 and 8, will only have windows facing the side, looking directly at next door in very close proximity. I am not confident this will give future residents adequate light, and 7 and 8 are the 2 smallest proposed bedrooms as well. Whether it contravenes CS41 for this reason is not addressed by the planning officer in his report, but he does point out that there is a lack of windows on the facing elevation, clearly showing that 3 residents will be looking at a brick wall or a fence no more than a metre away. It's very dark. In addition, there's no separate communal space and only one average-sized kitchen. This is very intensive accommodation. Paragraph 12 says it's normal for there to be 6 people in this sized house,
But that's usually a family of 2 or 3 adults and children, not 8 separate adults, which is an unreasonable intensification for the house and area and doesn't provide a good standard of accommodation. I think this falls into the category of just because you can doesn't mean you should. The planning authority is proposing to contravene its own parking policy by not requiring the one space that its policy asks for. This was perhaps acceptable as a family home, but is completely mad for 8 adults. At the very least, BCP should be enforcing its own policies. There is considerable stress on parking in the road already, and this property is near the junction with Howard Road. Parking close to the junction is one of the factors making this area an accident black spot, so much so that the council has recently agreed to red surfacing on Howard Road's junctions to try to reduce accidents. Conversion to this sized HMO means that what was a family home that fits within this traditional residential setting will now fundamentally change in physical character, with a huge dormer and extension and makeup of inhabitants. This will contribute to changing the area and feel of the community. There are several nearby HMOs, and we must recognise that some will be unregistered and so not in the CS24 calculation. 8 bedrooms is a clear over-intensification of this house, and local residents are concerned at the lack of amenity for the future residents as well as their own, and the significant issues around parking that ignoring our own policy will not help. And finally, I just want to say I'm personally very unhappy that we are ignoring the overall picture of what is being done here and allowing a development that would not be allowed without planning permission if it were already an HMO, to be done in order to create an HMO. I urge you to refuse it, and if you can't, at least reduce it to a Class C4 HMO, which is in far better balance with the surrounding area. Additionally, I'd like condition 3 strengthened, clearly citing the exact drawings and plans as currently submitted for the dormer and extension. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, and thank you for offering me the opportunity to speak on this application. I'm Councillor Alistair Keddy, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents in the Queen's Park ward who feel very strongly about this, as you have heard. Residents have raised significant concerns about this application to convert a 3-bed semi-detached home into an 8-bed HMO in an already densely populated area. While HMOs play an important role in providing affordable accommodation for many people, residents are concerned that the increased concentration of HMOs risks changing the character and balance of this part of Queen's Park. The application, as we have heard, will remove family housing, which is critically undersupplied in an area in desperate need of it. There is a need to consider the overall balance of housing types, the cumulative impact of development, and the effect on residential amenity. With this in mind, the Queen's Park and Charminster Neighbourhood Forum are in the latter stages of producing a neighbourhood plan, which sets these considerations out quite clearly. Unfortunately, we cannot apply the neighbourhood plan yet, and in the absence of a local plan for BCP, it becomes very difficult to challenge developments like this, despite well-grounded objections from the community. As we have heard, more than 50 residents have raised significant concerns. These include parking pressures on streets that are already at or near capacity, increased residential density putting additional strain on local services when residents already struggle to access GP and dental services, noise from increased coming and going, lack of a waste management plan and the absence of a bin store, the cumulative impact on an area that already has 3 registered HMOs nearby and an unknown number that will be unregistered. I also note the SPD regarding parking in this suburban zone that requires just 1 parking space for an HMO with 8 rooms. Most reasonable people would feel this already sets a low bar for developments of this type. This application does not meet this already low bar for parking provision, with no parking spaces allocated at all. Should the committee be minded to approve this application, I would ask you to consider applying a condition to ensure it at least meets the minimum requirements under the SPD for parking. While I want to see a modal shift to active travel in sustainable communities. We lack the basic infrastructure of safe cycle lanes and crossings to support it in this area at this time. While this application may meet policy and regulatory requirements, residents are rightly concerned that this application will undermine local housing needs and impact the fabric of their community. We find ourselves in a position of policy compliance versus genuine community concern. I would ask the committee to give due weight to the residents concerned on the cumulative impact, the loss of family housing, and the inevitable pressure on parking as a material planning consideration. Should the committee be minded to approve, I would ask you to consider applying the following conditions. To ensure that it meets the minimum provision for parking under the SPD, to ensure a waste management plan is implemented as well as provision for bin storage, and to develop a noise management plan to mitigate against effects on neighbours. Thank you, Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Mr. Sanders, did you want to come back on questions raised, maybe particular in the planning history of why the June PD permit prior approval was refused and then subsequently the latter one approved? Thank you.
Excuse me. I'd have to have a look into that, into the system exactly. I can see it was a prior approval, so I'd have to look in specifically the changes there. What I can address though is I think there were some concerns raised about the built form specifically, and it's just to reiterate, the built form in terms of the dorm will be built under permitted development, and that is why we can't specifically consider it in terms of certain aspects as kind of laid out in the presentation. And I think in terms of, someone mentioned a condition to have the rear extension also built in terms of as well as the dormers prior to the occupation. Condition 3, I think, was raised, and that does include the rear extension within the condition there, just to provide some appeasement there. And
Sorry, confirmed, yeah. Sure.
I'm not sure if we can do that because that would be a previous application. I'd have to confirm that. But if you give me 2 minutes or so, I'll have a quick look at the.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions, Councillor Tarling?
Yeah, I've been slightly confused by this, and apologies if I've not picked this up. But the drawings that form part of the report pack show an existing side, existing rear, and then we have a set of proposed drawings. Now, if that is already granted, why are we seeing a proposed on the drawings? It should state previously approved. By submitting a proposed drawing, is suggesting that this is up for discussion as part of this application, and for my part, it's misleading.
Okay, so yes, that's what Mr. Sanders will be talking about specifically. So.
Was that the proposed plans and elevations diagram where it says previous extension approved under this reference? Is that the specific bit you're referring to?
Yeah, when we consider an application and we're looking at existing and proposed, one would assume that the drawings that are submitted as part of this application are actually making the proposal on the drawing is part of this application. The proposal is not part of this application. You've told us that they've already been approved under permitted development. So therefore, they're not proposed. Those are actual but not actuated. And I think it's quite misleading in the application to see that. In my part.
Sure. I believe the intention in regard to this is because for the change of use to occur, a certain floor space and facilities are required. So if they didn't show that, then there's no proof that the conversion could occur in that instance.
Mr. Councillor.
Yeah, agreed that, but I don't think this application should have been accepted on the basis that the drawings are not correct.
Councillor Pedrin.
Thank you. I want to get some information on the issue, one of the issues raised by Councillor Carl Brown, namely the separation distance between the house in question, 63A and 63, which appears to only have a very narrow access passage. What's the separation distance?
Could you repeat, sorry, the properties, what's that called?
The separation distance between the side of 63 and the side of 63A. Sorry, 65.
Sorry.
65 and 65A.
Is it 60? I mean, I can't give a super accurate measurement just on what I'm operating on here, but if I just did it on Google Maps between the two, it's just over a metre, between a metre and a metre and a half. It's quite hard to be accurate. I'd have to go away and measure the plans correctly using our systems.
Normally, we're talking about separation distances of at least in the teens, if not 20s, between properties. For principal windows, only light into a lot of these bedrooms, it's different from if it's, you know, a back room looking over a garden.
Councillor Salmon.
So, I know we've not even reached for debate yet, because I'm well aware we have to. I don't like these discussions because quite often we have to go, yep, we hear all the concerns, they talk about light access and all of that. There's no right to light. We have to make some really horrible decisions in this committee because of the framework. If we're going to do that, though, I want to make sure that the report in front of us is absolutely 100% accurate, and I'm totally confident in it. Given that one of the reports has already had some confusion that's had to be fixed by a last-minute addendum, we have had a few reports, I think in the last month, I can remember where there have been spelling mistakes, superfluous housing instead of sufficient housing and things like that. Would it be such an awful idea for us to defer this decision up until the next committee when we can feel absolutely confident all of the points that have been raised by the ward councillors have been addressed in these reports? Can I propose that now, or do I need to wait for debate?
No, I shall refer to Mr. Gould.
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
Okay. What information would be forthcoming at a later date?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not sure. Sorry, what is it, Councillor Salmon? You're saying you haven't got the confidence at the moment?
I'm saying because there's been such discussion about, oh, is this accurate in the report? Are these the right drawings? And then I've heard somebody say, let's have a look on Google Maps. That rings alarm bells for me, where I just go, guy, if this was an operation we were performing on a patient, I wouldn't go into the operating theatre with that. This is also an important decision. If there is any doubt about the reports, like I said, one of the other reports that we've just looked at had a format mistake that made the advice look different. It was corrected by a last minute addendum. There are no last minute addendums to this, but I don't like making decisions by the seat of my pants on stuff like this. I wonder if it is sensible to defer if there is any doubt.
My initial feeling is I don't think there's a need to defer it at the moment. It's not unusual for members to ask questions of officers live in the committee, and we might have to spend a few moments finding an answer. And George is probably working out at the moment to try and ascertain that distance between the two walls of 65 and 65A. I mean, by my experience, it's going to be approximately 2 meters, maybe a bit less. But George can try and get a more specific answer. In terms of the plans, works that have been ongoing at this property. So some of the works that they are doing under permitted development right are actually taking place at the moment. So I do share the sentiment of Mr. Sanders when he says that if those works that they're doing under permitted development right, or they got prior approval for, weren't shown on the current plans, I suspect members would be saying, "And how on earth are you going to convert this to an 8-person HMO? Because there just isn't the physical room." So it is a slight quirk of the planning legislation, but at the moment the authorised use of this property is a C3 dwelling house, and therefore that affords them, absence of permitted devices having been removed, which they haven't been, to do works that meet the criteria of permitted development. Obviously then the application before you seeks to consider the acceptability of the change of use of the premises from a C3 to a sui generis HMO. And so I don't really feel that at the moment there's anything in my mind that's saying we need to defer it. And I say, if George is able to just give a bit more of an accurate measure between the distances between those two properties, that would be my advice at the moment, Chair, that you can continue to consider the merits of the scheme.
Okay, so Mr. Sanders.
Just measured up the plans, and it's 3 metres to separation distance. And do we still have the question about planning history? Is that wanting to be known specifically?
Yes, good, please.
So with the nature of prior approvals, what happened is a neighbour wrote in an objection, and the nature of the plans submitted for that prior approval were very minimal. So prior approval was not granted in that instance because the applicant didn't provide any evidence to overcome the neighbouring amenity concerns raised by the objector, namely not much was really supplied at all. What then happened is they supplied more information in the terms of the plans, and then no one then objected either, and therefore the prior approval was granted in that instance.
Okay, thank you. So we do have the proposal to defer from Councillor Salmon, seconded by Councillor Canavan. So just to confirm with Democratic Services, we should take that vote.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, so at the moment you were sort of dealing with questions. So I don't know if you want to check if there are any more questions, and you can then move on to the debate on that motion to defer.
Oh, okay. So are there any other questions? So no, we will go to the deferment. So we've heard from the team leader of planning and the officer about the information as it is now. So if you are still unhappy with that, vote now for deferment.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you are against deferment, show now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And if you're abstention,
1.
So that is a balance. And my casting vote will be to proceed now. So if we go to the debate, Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know it's finally, I would quite happily defer this, but I think we'd be facing the same issues at the next planning meeting as we are here. There's so many questions raised every time we get an HMO come up. One that always gets picked up is the unlicensed or unregistered HMOs. There's not a lot we can do about that in this committee meeting, but I would like to see, and perhaps those councillors that are otherwise minded may wish to support that we do some work on the unlicensed HMOs going forward. As I've heard from both ward councillors that have spoken very well on this, it is, I think, an unreasonable intensification, and I'm not supportive of this one. I have actually been very supportive of HMOs in the past as an option, but I just really feel this is a step too far in the intensification. 8 bedrooms in a house of this size. Issues with the separation. I mean, in theory, number 65 could put up a 2 metre high fence, and effectively that, whatever the separation of the building, the red line currently shows it almost dividing in half. You block the light to that other property, really impacting on the quality of life of those 2 bedrooms on the ground floor. I really don't, apart from the no parking space, as in not compliant with SPD, I don't know how strong a grounds we've got with just that. I don't like the over intensification. I think in this case, it is a step too far. If it was 6, maybe 8, it just, for me, we've seen so many of these, and quite often you go, yeah, okay, that'll work. But this one really probably is the most intensified or the most rammed in HMO I think I've seen in all my time on planning committee, and for me it is a step too far. So I can't support it, but I'm not going to propose rejecting it because I want to hear the rest of the debate. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Rice. No, not at this time. Thank you. Councillor Rice.
So I'm just concerned about the access to the cycle parking provision at the back there. So I don't know whether we've got an accurate, this is a separate question actually, it's the distance between the building wall and their boundary, as opposed to the wall of the neighbouring property. I'm just concerned about access down that passageway, especially given that there's 2 or 3 doorways along there, and whether there would be a step into those doorways. The parking standards supplement, there isn't anything as far as I can see in the report that mentions that specific access issue and how wide it is. So I'm just wondering whether we've overlooked that. In the guidance, it says that it should be a minimum of 1.5, should ideally be 2 metres wide, absolute minimum of 1.5 metres wide, although it does then say case specific when there's existing buildings. But so I think that distance isn't, well, it would be useful to know that distance.
Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. So if Councillor Tulling was minded to move rejection, I would be happy to second it. Because
but he hasn't, so if you wanted to move.
Well, I'm happy to move it then, if you want me to, because I agree entirely with what has been said. I just think it is overdevelopment. It has clearly, from what we've heard, a significant impact on the neighbouring property. It has an impact on parking. And what concerns me the most, Chair, about this report is that it's as though we're ticking boxes. And I really am uncomfortable about that, because it's not seeing this development in the round. It's not looking at the impact on the residential area. It's simply saying, does it meet this policy? Does it meet Y policy? And that's not good enough. I think we have to take the interests of the residents into account and to hear what they've had to say. And for all of those reasons, I would be prepared to move rejection of this application.
Okay, so I understand where you're coming from and the residents coming from, but you mentioned the parking SPD. Are there any other policies where you think
it's over intensification?
Right. Okay, and referral to which policy?
I don't know.
You can carry on.
Yeah, we'll come back. So do we have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Tyler? Councillor Flack?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to second the proposal. My concern, my biggest concern with this is that this is a semi-detached property, and were we to, permit this, I would feel so sorry for the people that lived in the next door, because most of the transit areas are adjacent to the party wall. So every time somebody walks up and down that corridor on 3 levels, we're talking about ground, first and second floor levels, the corridors are all to the adjacent property. So I totally agree with what the proposer has said, that it's overdevelopment of this semi-detached property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salmon.
So I think it's really important we're transparent about the decision we're about to make here. If this committee votes to reject this application, then there is a possibility, probably a certainty of appeal, where unless our grounds for refusing it are rock solid, that will be overturned, permission will be granted anyway, and costs are potentially awarded against the local authority. There are no objections in this document. No objections we can use as committee. There are objections from residents, but we have to be really clear, that doesn't matter. You know, that is not something we can take into account. This is not a democratic process. That is not how planning committee works. It is a quasi-judicial thing. We are not going, this is what I think is a good idea, this is what I think is a bad idea. We are going, how can we apply planning legislation in a way that doesn't expose the local authority to the risk of judicial review and so on? I can't see solid reasons for refusal. I don't think they've been given yet. There isn't anything we can do about over-intensification of HMOs and things like that. If we wanted to address that, we can't do that in this committee. That's a matter for national government. They've thrown out our local plan. What can we do? Even if there were conflicts, we would still be talking about the tilted balance and the fact that we've got a massive shortage on our 2-year housing supply. We can't refuse this application. I think it would be far more productive. I did hear one of the ward councillors mention additional conditions. I think actually there are useful things we can do in this committee through condition, but we can't refuse this application. If anything, if we refuse this application, a worse thing is approved ultimately.
Okay, Councillor Pedro.
Matt was first.
Sorry, I know we had questions earlier, but just as a clarification, this is sui generis. So just to confirm, it doesn't fall under Article 4 because it's sui generis. Is that correct?
Mr. Gould?
No, it would.
It would still fall under Article 4.
The Article 4 removed PD rights
For
to change of use.
I can't
from
hear.
C3 to C4.
Chair, I can't hear.
Sorry. The Article 4 direction that covers Bournemouth obviously removed the PD right to go from C3 to C4, but because this is sui generis is, you know, the Latin is unclassified, so it automatically needs permission anyway. So it's not necessarily hit by the Article 4.
But it's the Article 4 that talks about the intensification. So okay, let's get back to where
so you're on about the CS24 argument,
exactly,
which is in the Bournemouth core strategy, which is purely focused on a high concentration of HMOs in a given area.
Yeah.
Because that prior to this local plan, but that was in some parts of Bournemouth that was becoming an issue. So the idea behind CS24 is it's just, you know, a threshold based policy that's saying that if the concentration is less than 10% within the given zone, then it's fine.
Okay.
The idea to spread them out.
So
but so in this, well, I don't want to jump the gun, but I'll wait to be invited by the chair. But yeah, that's the CS24 point. It's just purely focused on the concentration of them.
So the point I would make in terms of a debate, in terms of supporting Patrick's proposal, is that we could therefore, if we don't know the concentrations, then we could therefore have that as an objection on the basis that there are unlicensed HMOs in the area that we're unaware of, and have that add that to add to the strength to Patrick's argument.
We have been down this route before. The best that the officers can do is access the information that's available to them. And I do seem to remember this coming up on a previous debate on a proposed HMO in the Boscombe area. The report sets out what, to the best of our assessment, you know, the figure is, and I think it's 4% from George. 4.54%. 4.54. So that is obviously significantly below the 10%. So you could take the view that, you know, even if there's a few that have not been pit captured, then you probably wouldn't still meet the 10%. But just the point I'm trying to stress is that, you know, the officers can only work to the information that they have available, and that's a reasonable position.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but maybe half of the HMOs aren't registered. We don't know, but yeah, I'll say.
Councillor Pedro.
Thank you. For Councillor Salmon and me, this is deja vu on last week's Western Planning Committee in many ways. On that occasion, it was 2 adjoining semi-detached 3-bedroom currently houses, both of which the application was to convert both into 8-bed HMOs. And as chair, I spoke strongly that although I absolutely hated it and did not, you know, my heart was chuck it out, but my head said that because we have no local plan, current local plan, because planning legislation doesn't specifically say you can't, we had no planning grounds to throw them out. There was a huge number of objections from local residents, as there are on this one, and I'm not surprised for both of them, both last week and this week. I'm not surprised there are objections. The one difference to me on this one, as opposed to the one in Weston, well, there are two or three things. One is the failure to provide a parking space, which contradicts the SPD. The other is living conditions for the people in bedrooms, particularly bedrooms 6 and 7, and to some extent 4 upstairs, which actually 4 is worse in a way because it's a bay window. It's even nearer to the boundary. To be looking at virtually a blank wall or maybe a high fence or who knows what in due course, with the cycle parkers walking past and walking, down the side alleyway there, I think I feel that we possibly have got planning reasons to throw this one out. It's a bit marginal, but I'm sort of inclined to see where we go on this, particularly on the failure to provide the parking space in accordance with the SPD and living conditions for certain of the new residents. As was said before, the housing needs for the area are predominantly 3-bed houses, not 1-bed, even 1-bed flats, certainly not 1-bed rooms in multiple occupation. So to give permission to convert a 3-bed house to an 8-bed HMO is counterintuitive. But under the legislation, or lack of legislation, as the case may be, in many cases we've had to. But as I say, because of the particular circumstances on this one, I think possibly there is reason to refuse.
Just get Mr. Gould to come in with possible policy details.
Thanks, Chair. So listening to various comments from members, we've had people talking about the scheme being out of character with the prevailing sort of character of the area. I believe Ward Councillor made a comment which Councillor Pedafin has also just reiterated about a feeling that some of the bedroom windows would have a poor outlook due to their proximity to maybe the boundary fence at ground floor, but also at first floor, which would obviously be a slightly bigger distance because they're above the boundary treatment. So that would be the 3 metres that George talked about to the side wall of number 65. So that implies that there might be a concern about a poor standard of residential amenity for future occupiers. There's been comments made about impact on neighbouring residential amenity from the intensification of the use of the property, certainly in respect of the neighbouring property that's the other part of the semi-detached. So, and we've also just talked about, talking with Councillor Gillett about the concentration. There are policies in our local plan that would certainly deal with the sort of more character and residential amenity issues. I would probably urge caution about the CS24 argument because it's been demonstrated to the best of our ability that it doesn't exceed the 10% within the catchment zone. So that might be slightly iffy ground on an appeal, absence of any evidence to, alter that figure. In terms of the character of the area, there has been talk of CS24, but members should also note that in the district-wide local plan, which is 2002 local plan for the Bournemouth area, which does still have safe policies, there is policy 6.17. And this goes into talking about proposals being compatible with the existing character of an area. It also talks about safeguarding the amenities of neighbouring residents. It talks about that preferably they should be detached buildings. It doesn't actually deal with the residential amenity standards for future occupiers, but CS41 of the core strategy says the council will seek to ensure that all development spaces are well designed and of high quality. Development should, through its scale, density, layout, siting, character and appearance, be designed to respect the site and its surroundings, provide a high standard of amenity to meet day-to-day requirements of future occupants, and contribute positively to the appearance, safety of the public realm. So there are policies, Chair, and I think you're looking at, I would advise CS41 for future occupiers, residential amenity, 6.17 for the character and impact on neighbouring residential amenity, and I would advise against CS24. I hope that helps.
That's very useful. So, Councillor Gillett, did you want to?
It's just going back on Marion's point there that the legislation for HMOs in Poole is very, very different to what's in Bournemouth. Apart from I think in Talbot Village, you've got where Poole adopted Bournemouth's kind of strategy, but apart from that, you've got all sorts of the concentration rules I don't think they even apply in Poole at all, apart from Talbot Village.
Just Talbot, yeah.
Yeah.
And Councillor Salmon.
I think we're trying very hard to have our cake and eat it here. We cannot go at the same time, oh yeah, we really like this report, we're not concerned about it at all, there's nothing wrong with it, we're not going to defer to look at it again. Oh, but actually, we are just about to reject this, even though the report says, for example, maybe we're going to pull out CS41. This report says it conforms to CS41. If the report had been written differently, and even if it had identified a conflict with CS41, we would then be being told, even though there is a conflict with CS41, given that we are out of date with our local plan and the need for housing on the tilted balance, I think we would probably still be being told to approve this. Let's be realistic. If this committee rejects this application on CS41, it is going to go to appeal, and there is no way, absolutely no way, that appeal is not upheld. And planning permission will go ahead exactly as this application is in front of us. There is no way I see this standing up at appeal. I think we would be making far better use of this committee's time and serving the residents better if we were to be realistic about what is about to be approved and looking at additional conditions that would mitigate the harm. Otherwise, all we're doing is making the easy decision that isn't best for residents, instead of making the hard decision that we need to in front of us, which is going to be to approve this. It fits in with the planning framework. We should be looking to condition it properly. I would be amazed if this isn't overturned at appeal. If we're not unhappy with this report that doesn't have any planning reasons to reject, then we can't suddenly pretend that there are planning reasons to reject.
Okay, thank you. So obviously, I've been on committees where this has exactly happened. So the report is well documented and well reasoned out. The committee, and this is why we have a committee, why residents can raise a committee. There is interpretation, as we've heard from Mr. Gould. He acknowledges that yes, the report is solid, but as with everything, if the residents are questioning it and we're questioning it, there is a scope, and this is where the debate comes in. But Councillor Rice.
Well, I just wanted to ask two different things. Could we recommend that it becomes a C4 HMO? That was recommended by one of the councillors. Is that anything that we can do? And wondering whether we have this distance between the boundary and the wall of the property, and whether, again, there isn't anything in the documentation with regards to that distance. And the highways have said that they're okay with there not being any on-site parking provision. given that there is cycle provision, but we haven't acknowledged that access to the cycle provision. For me, that feels like that would be a valid planning reason to turn it down. But I was just wondering if that is a valid planning reason.
Mr. Sanders, obviously the application in front of us is an 8-person HMO, and is there scope to consider?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Gore, but I'm pretty sure that'd be quite a substantial change in the application. It would be assessed differently because the occupation rate would be lower. May I, is that the measurements of the?
That's the measurement from the elevation to the boundary fence.
Sure. The elevation to the boundary fence for the cycle going from the rear to the front appears to be 1.2 metres. Obviously, the report, we were given the advice of the Highway Authority. They would have assessed that against the SPD, and we took their view, which was no objection, but the measurement is 1.2 metres.
Okay, so Councillor Canavan, as proposer, you've heard what Mr. Gould has set out with the policies he thinks could be used. Are you happy with that? Do you want to say some more?
I am happy with that, Chair, but I am reflecting on what Councillor Salmon has been saying. And in my head, I've been trying to think of ways in which we might be able to condition this. Because the last thing, I mean, I think this application is awful, but the last thing I want to do is make it worse by them appealing and getting what they want with no conditions. So I am reflecting on how we could condition it to meet the concerns which have been expressed, and I'm really struggling.
So obviously the main concerns I think we heard about was about noise, waste management, and bin storage. Parking, I don't think that could be conditioned in any way. So it's those types of things which the management plan is the core thing to control these things, and that's the balancing. So you as proposer, Jill, if I'm incorrect, that he could withdraw his proposal if so wish.
Yes, Councillor Canavan, you can withdraw that motion with the and with the consent of the seconder.
Okay, so Councillor Rice.
Well, if there was a proposal to refuse it, then I would also like there to be added in that on balance, 1.2 metres is not enough. It doesn't meet our minimum requirements and our parking standards, so that would be something that was added in. And just to check that was a valid thing.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rice. It kind of goes to Councillor Salmon's point. The two key words here is planning judgment, and the courts always say in case law that they're not going to really intervene in planning judgment. So as the decision maker, we think about the appeal report that comes at the end of this meeting. Roughly about a third of appeals are allowed as an overturn. So it's basically that professional person exercising their planning judgment. So whilst an officer might look at something and put it into the balance and in the round think it's acceptable, members have been talking about certain issues today that they might have concern with. And as the decision maker, you're perfectly entitled to take a different view to the case officer, providing obviously with the guidance of people like myself to make sure that you back it up with policy and that we're not walking, straight into a wall in any appeal situation. Even if I may, Chair, the point about deferral or changing the nature of the application, I would probably say, given the issues that have been identified, it's not necessarily going to be easy and straightforward to overcome them. So, for instance, the issue of what might be perceived to be the poor outlook from some of those bedroom windows, there's no quick fix to that, bar a significant change to the nature of the application. So I would say, I would advise members to determine what's in front of them today, and if they are happy with it, then they'll vote to approve it. If they're not, then we can work up the reasons for refusal, link them to policy. Thank you.
Yeah, that's useful. Councillor Salmon.
I think it might help because my notes are rubbish, and I haven't got perfect recall. I believe Councillor Carr-Brown did come up with 3 conditions, which I recall as being quite sensible. I can't remember if officers commented on if any of those 3 conditions were possible. Would it be possible for Sharon to restate what those conditions were and to hear from officers if they were realistic? Because actually, if those conditions are possible, that would influence whether or not I felt I could support Patrick's proposal to refuse. Can we ask her to refresh us on what those were and have an officer response on them?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Salmon. Actually, you slightly misunderstood me. I was suggesting that there were 3 policies that refusal could be based on. The condition that I asked for was the enhancing of condition 3 to actually specify, that was if it were approved, to specify the drawings. I believe Councillor Kelly suggested some conditions, but just to very quickly say, I think this really does hinge on the
No, if you
ability
keep it
of
just condition. So, Councillor Kelly,
the
what
bedrooms at the
condition?
bottom to have light.
Thank you, Chair. I, on my representation, requested 3 conditions. They were to ensure that the application meets the minimum provision under the SPD for at least 1 parking space, as it is wholly inadequate to have none, and it should be included as a statutory minimum as per our planning policy. The other was to ensure a waste management plan is implemented, as well as provision for bin storage. Without those 2 things, we get very common issues with these types of developments. And thirdly, to reflect the concerns of residents with noise, to develop a noise management plan.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that extra. So, Mr. Gould.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the first point from Councillor Brown. So we've got a situation here where the ground floor extension has been approved under the prior approval. So that would need to be built in accordance with that plan. And if it wasn't, it could be subject to enforcement action. The works to the roof, which are being claimed as permitted development, we don't have the same level of control, because providing they do those works within the confines of what the permitted development regs say, then in theory, it could look different to what you see on the plan. That said, I wouldn't necessarily see any harm if members were going to approve the application in stipulating that it should be built as per the approved drawings. It'd be an interesting point of case law as to see whether someone could challenge that, because obviously if the works are permitted development, they don't require permission, and so providing they just work within those so there was that point. The 1 parking space, the parking SPD sets out that for a larger sui generis HMO, the requirement would be 1. Obviously, it's below that. And I've been reading the highway officer's comments, and basically it's because obviously the existing property as a 3-bed house would generate a certain parking requirement in accordance with the SPD as well. So I think they've taken the pragmatic view that the existing dwelling house doesn't have on-site parking, and therefore the requirement for a HMO only requiring 1 parking space. There's no real additional harm that flows from that. Bin store, you could add a condition requiring some form of bin store. And the last point by the councillor, I think he was referring to a management plan like we've seen on other HMOs, which provides contact details should there be antisocial behaviour associated with that. And just finally, one extra point that Councillor Rice has raised about the width of the footpath leading to the cycle store at the rear of the site. She's right that the SPD says 1.5. The highway officer has accepted 1.2. So technically, you could say it's not in accordance with the SPD.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tarling.
Yeah, apologies. I don't think Councillor Canavan has actually withdrawn his motion yet. And if he was to withdraw it, I would probably having now read CS 41, As Mr. Gould pulled it up, I was actually reading it and mouthing it towards you. I do think that we could object to it under CS 41. Looking at bedroom 7, which has bedroom 4 above with the bay window overhanging it, and the potential of a future number 65 could put a fence up 2 meters high. You'd literally end up having a space like that looking out. And the SPD, the loss of parking spaces, as Mr. Gould just mentioned, as a 3 or 4 bed, maybe 1 parking space would be sufficient. But as Councillor Kelly has mentioned quite a few times, the eight people on 1 parking space is really stretching that requirement. And by no means is this a criticism of the officer's report. The officer has done exactly what he do, is apply the facts and tested each individual test of the policy against the applications before us. What we're doing is having a holistic approach to it. And yeah, as I mentioned in my first comments, I wasn't proposing objections. I wanted to hear the debate, and I'm quite interested to hear how we've gone round and feeling the sentiment of the room. Nobody seems to be very happy with this proposal. But yeah, I do think we have grounds to raise an objection. I don't agree with Councillor Salmon that it absolutely would get knocked back on appeal. I think it's it's a marginal balance discussion, and I think the planning inspectorate would probably look at it in the marginal process. And the fact we've had a debate on it and we've applied our best thought should weigh in favour with the planning inspector. So I don't agree with Councillor Salmon on the fact it's a done deal that it'll go to appeal and win on appeal. I don't think, it may win on appeal. I don't think any conditions either would necessarily ease this for the other residents. I can't see any conditions about bin stalls or the SPD one. They can't create a parking space there. There's virtually no space to create a parking space, so you'd have to take out drop curbs and everything, and effectively take out the whole frontage of the building, which again would impact the feel of the road, because I don't think there's any sort of in front of the house parking. So it's a very complicated application. I understand it's a lot of discussion over this, but I'm still minded to object on the basis of CS 41 and the non-compliance with the SPD.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Canavan, did you want to sum up? And are you still happy to hold your? I would prefer to hold my right. Objection. I think support is helpful. Wanted the city policies, which I'll Councillor Ross also. And I think
Not obeying my own instructions, I had to put my microphone on because I can't hear. But yeah, no, I would prefer to stick to my moving rejection on the grounds that we've been discussing. And if Mr. Gould is happy to encapsulate all of the grounds that we have been discussing, then that's what I'd like to do.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Hollier, could you?
So, Chair, just to be clear, I captured out of character with the prevailing character of the area, poor standard of residential amenity for future occupiers, and impact on neighbouring residential amenity due to the proximity of the property. Contrary to district-wide local plan policy 6.17 and CS 41, I have also heard mention of contrary to the SPD.
No. Yeah.
So I don't know what the wording on that would be.
Mr. Gould.
In 2 respects.
Contrary to the SPD in respect of the cycle path or the car parking?
Both. Sorry.
Just the cycle provision. Car parking is not.
Whichever is stronger, you think?
I mean, I made the point about on the car parking aspect. Obviously, the existing 3-bed semi-detached property would generate a parking requirement, and it has no on-site parking at the moment. So I think the view that the highway officer has taken is that, well, a HMO of this nature would only generate, in accordance with the SPD, the requirement for 1 car parking space, and the existing property doesn't have any, so there's no real harm that flows from that. That's the point that you're entitled to disagree, but that's the point that the So if members wanted, then Jill would need to add to that list, contrary to the parking SPD, in terms of lack of parking. And if also members wanted the issue that Councillor Rice has raised about the width of the alleyway leading to the rear garden being of a substandard width, again, not in accordance with the requirements of the parking SPD. The only question then that remains is whether it's also linked to policy. Can I just have a moment on that,
Yes,
Chair?
Councillor Rice.
From a practical point of view, I personally don't agree with the car parking aspect, because if there was car parking, the next door property has one on-site car parking facility. If this property did the same, it would mean the loss of a car parking facility on the street due to the drop curbs. So you would be replacing one car parking space with the loss of one car parking space, the equivalent. So for me, practically, it doesn't make any difference, that aspect. So I'm not keen for that to be included, but the access to the back is what I feel is on balance, not because we're not providing any alternative transportation option apart from walking and the bus.
Thank you, Mr. Gould.
Yeah, so that's a couple of policies now from the core strategy, Chair. So if members also wanted to include it in any potential reasons for refusal, lack of car parking, so that would obviously be contrary to the parking SPD, but also CS16 of the core strategy talks about parking standards. Parking provision for new development shall be in accordance with the council's adopted parking standards. And then if members also wanted to include a reason for refusal about the inadequate width of the alleyway, I would suggest CS18, which is a policy that seeks to promote increased opportunities for cycling and walking. And the point being that if you don't have adequate facilities, it doesn't promote a person to want to ride a bike.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Canavan. Yeah, so both parking and the alleyway aspect.
Yeah.
Councillor Flagg, you're happy?
Thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to ask if Mr. Gold could reaffirm what he said earlier on with regards to the amenity of neighbouring property. And then you also mentioned about preferential for detached dwellings.
Yeah, so
I wonder if that is a standalone item in that policy.
So policy 6.17 of the district-wide local plan, which was the 2002 local plan, but policies are saved from within that, and this is the saved policy, so it's still applicable to use it. The little one of that policy talked about a proposal being compatible with the existing character of an area, and I've heard debate from members saying that they don't feel it is. It also then talks about, little one also talks about the amenities of neighbouring residents, and I think that comes to a point that you raised about the semi-detached nature of the property. And then little two of that policy actually also says that it should be a substantial detached building, which again, I think you've made the point about the fact of being semi-detached. So 6.17 you could use.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Salmon, is it adding to what we're proposing? Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify, is that 6.17 of the national planning, this is all rooted in the local plan still?
Local plans.
And can I just clarify my understanding of this tilted balance then? Because when I look at the tilted balance, I've got MPPF, paragraph 11D, the statutory tilted balance. Where the development plan is out of date, decision makers must grant permission unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in this framework taken as a whole. That to me makes it really crystal clear if we're about to refuse on something subjective like CS41 or these other bits of the local plan where there is balance, where we are using our own judgment to go, oh no, we think we can interpret this as that, where there is something subjective, the minute this gets to the inspector, he is going to go, local plan's out of date, massive need for housing, overturn the appeal. I just wanted to clarify there was nothing in our refusal that actually fits within the MPPF, which
Okay, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so obviously Councillor Salmon's made reference to paragraph 11 of the NPPF, which is, promotes sustainable development, and it introduces what has become known as the tilted balance, and obviously that applies to schemes that will provide housing. So you could argue that and he's quoted parts of it where we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, which we don't in the BCP area. You could say that the policies that are concerned with providing housing are switched off, and therefore this tilted balance might kick in. Unless, of course, and then there are 2 caveats to that. Firstly, there are strong reasons for refusing it, and that talks about protected areas. So it's concerned with things like green belt, highly sensitive habitat areas, conservation areas, things like that. None of that applies here. But the second little 2 then talks about adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. And again, as the decision maker, you're perfectly entitled to say that we acknowledge the fact there's a housing land supply and that this might improve it. But however, on this occasion, we feel that the harms that we've identified significantly and demonstrably outweigh those benefits. And I've seen that on appeal decisions where that significantly and demonstrably harm was just because there was one window that might be overlooking a neighbour's garden.
That's useful. Thank you for that. So if we can summarise again the proposal to refuse, Ms Hollyoak. So it's adding on. Yes, please.
So, out of character with the prevailing character of the area, poor standard of residential amenity for future occupiers, impact on neighbouring residential amenity due to proximity of property, and lack of car parking, inadequate width of alleyway for cycle facilities, and they are policy reasons. District-wide local plans 6.7. Sorry, 6.17, CS 41, CS 16, and the parking SPD, and CS 18.
Okay.
Sorry, just one final, and then you won't hear from me again, Chair. Can I just do the usual bit that if members are going to vote down that route, can we also add into the recommendation that delegated authority goes back to the head of planning operations for the officers to word up the detailed reasons for refusal that would go on the decision notice?
Thank you for that. And Councillor Canavan, you're happy with that? Councillor Flagg, you're happy? So we know what we're voting. So if you're to refuse the application, show now, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
If you're against refusal, show now.
No.
And abstention.
1.
So that application is refused. Thank you for your time. The next agenda point is 7. I got that. Yeah. So item 7 is the appeals report, and again we're seeing that we are performing in line with the government targets for both majors and non-majors. So is there anyone wants to make a comment on that? No, so we've noted that report. So that is the end of the meeting. Thank you.